As Prelims 2024 is fast approaching, it's now time for us to revise. And Legacy IAS brings you a series of revision of all the subjects. Here we will be beginning with revision of economy for UPSC Prelims 2024. In just 5 hours, we'll be revising the entire economy subject, right? Along with the previous year questions. Now, how is that possible? That is possible because we will be looking at the most important concepts based on the trend of the UPSC paper over 20-25 years. What all topics have been asked, what all kind of questions are asked, what all questions can be asked. All those things have been taken into account to design this entire series of revision in just 5 years along with the previous year questions. Alright, so let's get started. What we will do here is we will look at the important chapters. In that we will look at the important concepts. We will discuss that. I will explain that to you. If anything additional is required, I'll be giving you that. And subsequently, based on whatever things we understand, whatever concepts we understand, we will be solving previous year questions that have been asked based on it. Now remember, when we solve previous year questions, in those questions, we'll not just look at the question and get the answer and move ahead. Rather, what we will do is focus on other options as well, why they are wrong and what are they all about. Why? Because what UPSC does is, if they've asked you a question 2 years back and one of them is the correct option, after a few years they may ask questions based on the remaining 2-3 options which were there. So in that manner, a comprehensive revision of economy and other subjects will also take place in this series. I will be teaching you the economy part. And if you do that religiously, if you do this religiously, I'm sure it's going to help you a lot. You'll be able to solve a lot of questions. A lot of questions based on what all we'll be discussing will be asked in your upcoming prelims exam. So let's get started. The very first or the basic or the most important topic initially in economy is national income accounting. Now in national income accounting, there are few concepts that are very important. They are considered to be very basic, but at times can be very confusing. That is your GDP, gross domestic product, GNP, your gross national product, NDP, net domestic product, and NNP, that is your net national product. So first things first, what is GDP? What is gross domestic product? Now if you look at it, the name itself gives the hint or gives the answer. Let's try to break it down. Before I explain, let's break down the name itself. What do you mean by gross? By gross you would mean total. For example, your gross salary, it is the total. What do you mean by domestic? You know, if you would have traveled by flight, there are domestic flights and there are international flights. International flights go to other countries. What is a domestic flight? Domestic flight flies within the boundary of a particular country. So domestic flight of India will fly within the boundary of India. That means domestic means what? Within the boundary. And since we are discussing GDP of India, it will be within the boundary of India. Clear? Domestic is within the boundary of India in this case because it's Indian economy. We are looking at the GDP of India. Now, what is product? Now, product here can be goods as well as services. Even services are known as products. So here, not just the goods which are tangible, but services which are intangible will also be taken into account. So here you would be talking about goods and services. Now which goods and services? Not intermediary, but the final goods and services. We will be talking about the final goods and services. The final goods and services. So gross is total, domestic is within the boundary of India, product is the final goods and services. That means, what does your GDP become? Your GDP becomes the total value of the final goods and services produced within the boundary of India. So GDP is nothing but the total value of what? Of the final goods and services produced where? Within the boundary of India. That is your GDP. So all the final goods and services which are being produced within the boundary of India will be your GDP. Remember, it does not talk about by whom. A foreigner can come in India and produce, it is still a part of GDP. An alien from Mars can come in India and produce, it is still a part of the GDP of India. Why? Because it is being produced within the boundary of India, no matter who produces it. If it produces automatically by magic also within the boundary of India, it is GDP. Clear? So be very clear on this definition. Do not get confused. What about if foreigners produce anything? Is it talking about anything? No. It's just talking about within the boundary of India, no matter who produces it. Now, the concept of GNP is sort of dissimilar in the sense that when you talk about GNP, so when you talk about GNP, again similar things would be there. For example, gross is there. So we know the meaning of gross. Gross is total. National product. It is now national product. So we know the meaning of product also. Product is nothing but the final goods and services. So GNP, that is your gross national product. GNP, your gross national product, will be the total value of final goods and services. Here, instead of domestic, it is national. So national is related to nationals. Who is a national? Nationals are the citizens. A national is a citizen. So nationals are the citizens. So it is the total value of the final goods and services produced by the nationals. And since we are talking about the Indian GDP, it would be the Indian nationals. Indian nationals. So what is gross national product? Total value of final goods and services produced by whom? By the Indian nationals. There the question was where? Within the boundary of India. So domestic product. By whom? By the Indian nationals. Hence, it is the gross national product. Now remember, it is by the Indian nationals. That means it can be produced outside India also. If Indian nationals are going abroad and producing something, it will still be part of the GNP. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now, these are the only two things which you require to understand. Do not worry about net domestic product and net national product. It is very simple. I'll tell you what it is. So when it comes to net, what are we doing? We are basically from gross converting into net. From gross domestic product, we are converting into net domestic product. So the concept will remain same. What will change? Gross minus depreciation. Gross minus depreciation will be equal to net. Since gross minus depreciation equal to net, that means gross domestic product minus depreciation is equals to net domestic product, and gross national product minus depreciation will be equal to net domestic product. Now what is this depreciation? See, whenever you are producing the goods and services in an economy, there would be wear and tear of the things which you are using to produce those goods and services. The wear and tear of machinery, for example. So if the life of a machinery of 10 years, every year you can say, for example, 10% of the machinery is getting depreciated. So that value you have to exclude from the gross domestic product in order to get the net domestic product, and you have to exclude that value from the gross national product in order to get the net national product. Alright, so these are the concept of gross national product, gross domestic product, and their net. Now, let's quickly look at the questions, the kind of questions that are being asked. Many a times you may see the questions may not be generally, let's say, relating to the concepts that are there, as in the theoretical concept, but at times with respect to that concept, very commonsensical questions can be asked. So you need to focus on that as well. Okay, let's have a look at these questions. With reference to the Indian economy, consider the following statements. Statement 1 says the rate of growth of real gross GDP. Rate of growth of real gross GDP has steadily increased in the last decade. That's statement 1. Statement 2, the gross domestic product at market prices in rupees has steadily increased in the last decade. So, now the question is, are these correct or not? We need not know exactly, but by logic we can understand whether they are correct or not. For example, the statement 1, the rate of growth of real GDP has steadily increased. The rate of growth, first is the rate of growth, and that too of what? The real GDP. So what do you mean by real GDP? See, GDP can be nominal, another concept we will be doing now, and GDP can be real. Nominal as in, if you are calculating a GDP for the year 2023-24, you will be, if you are calculating the GDP for the year 2023-2024 at the price or at the rate prevailing in that particular year, that is 2023 and 2024, then that GDP is your nominal GDP. Right? Because I'll tell you why. Before that, let's understand what's real GDP. If you are calculating, let's say, a GDP for 2023-24 at some base year, let's say that base year is 2011. Now, this GDP is your real GDP, right? Why? Because whatever you have produced, you are calculating based on this base year. So you are not taking into account the increase that has happened due to the increase of inflation. So inflation amount is reduced. That is why it is showing the real GDP, the real production. See, your GDP can increase only if the inflation is increasing, then also your GDP can increase. Let's say in a year an economy produced just 1 pen, which was of 50 rupees. Next year also that economy produced just 1 pen. Now the cost of the pen is 100 rupees. So the GDP will increase from 50 to 100. But did the production increase? No, the economy produced the same single pen both the times. But the production did not increase for real. Only the value increased due to inflation. So that would be your nominal GDP. Right? So to actually get the real GDP, you have to remove the effect of inflation. How do you remove? By calculating GDP at a base year and not the present year, because the present year takes into account the increase in prices as well, that is the inflation as well. So when inflation is a part of the GDP, then it's a nominal GDP. Basically, you can understand that when you are calculating a GDP for a particular year with respect to the prices prevailing in that particular year, it's a nominal GDP. When you are calculating GDP of a particular year with respect to the prices of some base year, then it is a real GDP. Okay, so nominal GDP can easily increase because inflation is there. For real GDP to increase, it takes some doing. So here they are asking about increase in real GDP, and not just the increase, that if previously if it was, let's say, 100 and then it became 110 and then it became 112, then it became 113. So this is first year, this is second, this is third, this is fourth. This would be the increase in GDP, correct? But they are asking the rate of growth. So is the rate of growth also steadily increasing? Absolutely not. Here the rate of growth from 100 to 110 was 10%. From 110 to 112 was less than close to 2%. From 112 to 113 was less than 1%. So even though the GDP is increasing, the rate of growth of GDP is not increasing. And in India, in no 10-year series, it has so happened that the rate of growth of GDP has steadily or continuously increased. So the first statement is absolutely wrong. The second statement says that the gross domestic product at market prices in rupees has steadily increased in the last decade. Yes, because here they are not asking about the rate. They are just saying that the gross domestic product has increased. and GDP has kept on increasing. Even at times if the production is exactly the same or even slightly less, even then the GDP at market prices can increase because there will be inflation. A 10 rupees pen, if it costs, if there is a, let's say if there is a 10 rupees pen, now if the inflation is 10% and economy produced only one pen previously, now also it produced only one pen. So previously the GDP would be 10 rupees. And now the GDP would be 11 rupees. Why? Because inflation is there. So just by the account of inflation itself, the GDP can increase. And anyhow, the production keeps on increasing at least slightly year on year. Here, since they are not talking about the rate, hence this statement is correct. So the correct answer would be B only. Let's move on to the next question in the context of economy. Now a similar kind of a question. In the context of Indian economy, consider the following statements. The growth rate of GDP has steadily increased in the last 5 years. Growth rate, again talking about the growth rate. No. Growth rate consecutively for 5 years, it has not. Because it's the growth rate. If they would have asked the GDP has grown, possibly yes, but the growth rate, no. The growth rate in per capita income has steadily increased in the last 5 years. Growth rate in per capita income. Per capita income would have increased, but the growth rate in per capita income, again a no. So as you are seeing, all the growth rate things with respect to 5 years or 10 years are not correct. So the correct answer here is D, neither 1 nor 2. Now, the national income of a country for a given period is equal to what? National income would be equal to what? The total value of goods and services produced by the nationals. Now you will be able to get the answer. National income. Nationals. I think you already got the answer, but let us look at the other options as well. Sum of the total consumption and investment expenditure. No. Sum of personal income of all individuals. The money value of final goods and services. So confusion could be here. Sum of personal income of all individuals. Sum of personal income of all individuals would be personal income, not national income. From national income, you need to minus the taxes and all to get the personal income, right? So national income is what? The total value of the goods and services produced by the national. That means what? It is nothing but gross national income they are talking about, but national income in its purest form is the net national product. So what would be the net national product? The total value of goods and services produced by the nationals. That is your net national product. You will be subtracting the depreciation. Going on, increase in absolute and per capita real GNP do not connote a higher level of economic development if. Now please understand, here I will give you two sentences. Make sure you write those two sentences. It's very important in your answer writing. It will help you solve prelims questions also. What are those things? Remember, economic growth, the first statement is economic growth is a prerequisite. Prerequisite as in a requirement. A necessary requirement is a prerequisite for economic development. See, when you are doing economic development, includes increase in employment, increase in literacy, reduction in poverty. Now, how can you reduce poverty? Let's say you are giving some money, some cheap food, so on and so forth. Now, how can you do that? When you have some money to distribute. Now, how will you have money to distribute? When there is economic growth. So, to distribute money, you need to first have the money. Hence, for economic growth, for economic development, first you have to have the economic growth. So, economic growth is a prerequisite for economic development. But economic growth need not necessarily lead to economic development. For example, economic growth is there, but you are not providing any respite to the poor, no scheme for poverty eradication, no scheme for employment, no scheme for literacy, then it will not lead to economic development, correct? So remember these two lines, economic growth is a prerequisite for economic development, but economic growth need not necessarily lead to economic development. Having said that, let's look at the question. Increase in absolute and per capita real GNP, that means economic growth is happening. Do not connote a higher level of economic development, meaning it need not necessarily reflect in higher economic development if industrial output fails to keep pace with agriculture output. No, nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do. Economic development is related to socio-economic issues, poverty, illiteracy, unemployment, so on and so forth. Agriculture output fails to keep pace with industrial output. It's the same sentence in different manner. Industrial output fails to keep pace with agriculture output means nothing but agriculture output failing to keep pace with agriculture output. Since the statements are same, both cannot be correct. So anyhow, this would also be wrong. Imports grow faster than exports? Not necessarily. It has nothing to do with the economic development. It is again with respect to economic growth, not development, and foreign exchange, not development. So this is wrong. So what is the correct answer? Poverty and unemployment increases. So even if there is economic growth, but poverty and unemployment is increasing, that means what? That means that it does not indicate a higher level of economic development, even though the economic growth is there. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now, so our national income accounting is now done. Now let's move on to capital formation. So capital formation, in capital formation you will have capital getting accumulated. Let's understand what is capital formation. Now if I am earning some amount of money and what I am doing is I am, let's say for example I am completely utilizing it. If I completely utilize it, spend everything, will I have anything accumulated with me? Absolutely not. But if something gets saved, or let's say I invest something in capital asset, that would lead to formation of the capital. So formation of the capital can be in a liquid form, formation of the capital can be in an asset form, and when either of the two is there, then you can say that capital formation is happening. And that is very important. Why it is important? It is important simply because when there is capital formation, let's say in the form of asset, okay, so what can be that asset, that capital asset? It can be your roads, it can be your metros, it can be your hospitals, it can be your educational institutes, as in schools, colleges, right, runways, railways, so on and so forth. Now these things, please remember, they generate revenue. They generate revenue and hence keep, moving the economy forward. Okay, that's the importance of capital formation. Now, before that, let's understand one more concept, capital output ratio. What is the capital output ratio? Capital output ratio is the capital required per unit of output. Okay, capital required per unit of output. If you want an output of X amount, if the capital required is high, then capital output ratio will be high. So you will require more capital for small amount of output. Remember that. Okay, now let's look at the question. Despite being a high saving economy, capital formation may not result in a significant increase in output. Capital formation may not result in a significant increase in output due to what? Due to weak administrative machinery, due to illiteracy, due to high population density. Now if these would have been the reason, just imagine these options are similar. Illiteracy, high population density. So all of them cannot be correct at once. Also, this is nothing but the classical definition of high capital output ratio. What is high capital output ratio? You require a lot of capital just for a small amount of output. That is why, despite being a high saving economy, the capital formation, that means high saving economy, that means you're saving a lot of capital, but that is not leading to a significant increase in output. Why? Because your capital output ratio is high, right? So the correct answer would be high capital output ratio. Now, economic growth in country X. So talking about the economic growth, we have understood the concept of economic growth as well as the concept of economic development. Economic growth in country X will increase in country X will necessarily have to occur if there is technical progress in the world. See, here they are asking about economic growth in country X, but then talking about technical progress in the world economy. So again wrong, because the world in general can have technical progress, but the economy X need not necessarily be progressing. If they would have said country X, then we could have given a thought. Okay, but then also technical progress need not necessarily lead to it. Second is there is population growth in in country X. Now population growth alone in country X cannot lead to economic growth. That population needs to be converted into human capital. How does the population gets converted into human capital? By education, skill development and proper health. So just an increase in the population growth need not necessarily mean economic growth. Correct? Now, this says the volume of trade grows in the world economy. Again, it is growing in the world economy. It is not growing in country X. Also, even if they would have said country X, just the growth of volume of trade doesn't mean economic growth, right? Because trade can increase even when the imports are higher, right? So this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. There is capital formation in country X. Capital formation as in you are now saving money, you are now having money, you are now having capital, you are now forming the capital. So when can you form the capital? When the economy is growing. Hence, economic growth in country X will necessarily have to occur if there is capital formation. Clear? Now, human capital and social capital. I already briefly explained to you about the human capital. So what is human capital? See, you have a population. When to this population you add education, you add skills, you add health, it becomes human capital. Meaning now this population is able to work, to participate in the economy, to produce and to increase the productivity of the economy and to lead to economic growth in an economy. So population, when provided with education, skills and health, will get converted to human capital. So human capital is nothing but an educated, skilled and healthy population. I hope that's absolutely clear. So how can human capital be formed? By providing these things to the population. Now what is a social capital? So when we talk about human capital, it is very individualistic. I am a part of the population. If I am educated, I am skilled, I am healthy, I am a part of the human capital. Now like this, many other people part of the human capital. Let's say we have crores, millions and millions of people part of human capital. Now what relation do we have among each other? Do we have networking? Do we know each other? Do we have the trust among each other? So if, when the society has a trust and an integration among the human capitals, right, among the constituents of the human capitals, meaning among the individual who are part of the human capital, then you can say that that society has social capital. Now how social capital can be formed? By the trust developed among the individuals of the human capital. So both are intangible concepts, But I hope that's clear. Human capital at the individual level, social capital at the societal level. Having said that, let's look at this question. Human capital formation as a concept is better explained in terms of a process which enables individuals of a country to accumulate more capital. No. This more capital is talking about the physical capital, that is money and all. No, it's not right. It has nothing to do with money. Individuals of a country to accumulate more capital need not necessarily lead to higher human capital. So one is wrong. Since one is wrong, this is gone, this is gone. Increasing the knowledge, skill levels and capacities of the people of the country, absolutely yes. This is wrong, this is absolutely yes. Statement 2 is absolutely right. Accumulation of tangible wealth, no. As I said, these are intangible concepts. So this is also wrong. Now, accumulation of intangible wealth, yes. Knowledge is an intangible wealth. Accumulation of intangible wealth, yes, absolutely right. So 2 and 4 are correct. That means option C is the correct option. Now, in the context of any country, which one of the following would be considered as a part of its social capital? Now, the direct question on social capital. Proportion of literates in the population? No, this would probably be the part of the human capital. Stock of its buildings, other infrastructure? No, this is again tangible capital. So, this would neither be related to human or social capital. Size of the population in the working age, again related to the human capital. So this, guys, is related to human capital. This is neither related to human nor social capital. This again is related to human capital. What is the last one? The last one is the level of mutual trust and harmony in the society. How much these constituent elements of human capital trust each other, and then the society will decide the social capital. So this, guys, is the correct answer. This is related to social capital. Alright. Now, coming on to a very important topic. That is inflation. So a lot of concepts here and a lot of questions will be following. So now we'll be looking at the topic of inflation, the most important topic, and if you can have a proper understanding of inflation, every other topic will fall in place because it is linked to every other topic in the economy. So let's get started with inflation. The very first question is, what is inflation? So generally what happens is, whenever we come across any news of any XYZ commodity whose price is increased, we say there is inflation. No, that is not actually the definition of inflation. Meaning that if the prices of onions, let's say, goes up today, that's not inflation yet. Why? Because for calculating inflation, there is a price of a basket of goods and services that is calculated. Now in that basket, one of the product or one of the good will be onion, but like that there will be hundreds of other products as well. So it is very much possible that the prices of onions may have gone up, but the prices of other commodities may have remained same or gone down for a lot of commodities as well. That is why there is possibility that the net impact may be a fall in the prices of the entire basket of goods and services. So that may not actually be inflation, right? So let us understand what the definition of inflation is. Inflation is nothing but, and also one more important thing, the price rise needs to be a sustained one. It cannot happen that today the prices increased, tomorrow again it fell down. So since there was no sustenance in the price, it will again not be inflation. For inflation to occur, there needs to be a sustainable increase in the prices. Okay. So inflation is nothing but a sustained increase. A sustained increase in the prices. So it is a sustained increase in what? In the prices. Prices of what? Basket of goods and services. Basket of goods and services. Not a single commodity, not a single service, but a basket of goods and services. Alright. So that is your inflation. Now, what are the causes of inflation? See, inflation can be divided into different types based on different criteria. They can be divided with respect to the degree of inflation. into slow or creeping inflation, or let's say galloping inflation or hyperinflation. We'll see that. At the same time, based on the causes or the reasons for inflation occurring, they can again be divided into two types. So these two types would not just be two types but also give us the reason for inflation. So types as well as reason we'll be studying together. So what are the causes? One can be demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation. And the other can be a cost push inflation. Demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. This is the first one. So it is very clear, the first one is happening due to the increase in the demand, second one due to the increase in the cost. So let us understand how. So this first one is due to the demand supply mismatch. Demand supply mismatch. What do we mean to say? That let's say in an economy there are 100 pens and 100 people needed. So let's say in this scenario the economy is in equilibrium. So this is nothing but the supply, that is 100 pen present in the economy, and this is nothing but the demand, that 100 people want 1 pen each. So it is, let's say, sort of in an equilibrium. But now what can happen is, now the demand can go up and supply remain same. So demand goes to 110, supply remains same. So now since there is more demand, the prices will go up. Another thing what can happen is, demand can go up, at the same time supply can go down. Next year, let's say the economy could not produce, the demand increased to 110, and the next year the economy could not even produce 100 pens, it produced 90 pens. So the mismatch is even higher. Demand can go up and supply can come down. Or demand can remain constant. It was 100, can remain 100, but the supply can come down. Supply was 100, it became 90. So again there is a mismatch. So a mismatch between the demand and supply can cause demand pull inflation, and it can happen in these scenarios. Demand increasing with supply same, demand same but supply got reduced, or demand also got increased and supply got reduced as well. So even more of inflation may occur in that scenario. Okay, so this is due to the demand supply mismatch. Now let's look at cost push inflation. It is a very simple to understand inflation. Cost push inflation is nothing but, simply speaking, it has nothing to do with demand and supply. It has everything to do with the cost of the product going up, because the cost of the raw material which is required to produce that product or good or service has gone up. So whenever the input cost increases, how can the input cost increase? Input cost, let's say I am manufacturing a mobile. So when I am manufacturing a mobile, let's say I import the chip, microchip from China. Now China has increased its price. Now I have no control over it. China has increased the price. So now the chips are costlier. So the phone will be produced at a costlier rate. So the phones will be costlier, right? Did the demand increase made this happen? No, demand is same. Did the supply reduction make this happen? No, so China is ready to supply. Then what made this price go up? The increase in the raw material that was required to manufacture the phone. So whenever the input cost goes up, it may lead to inflation to go up, because the products will now be costlier, and that would be your cost push inflation. Clear? Now how to measure the inflation? The inflation can be measured with the help of index. So there is consumer price index, that is your CPI, and there is the wholesale price index, that is the WPI. Okay, Now consumer price index at the consumer level, wholesale price index at the wholesale level. Now RBI has the responsibility to have inflation targeting. RBI does inflation targeting of what? 4 plus minus 2%. RBI's job is to keep the inflation between 4 plus minus 2%. That means from 2 to 6%. It has to keep the inflation in the range of 2 to 6%. That's the responsibility of the RBI. So what is 2 to 6%? The inflation measured with respect to what? Measured with respect to consumer price index, not wholesale price index. Before 2015, all the measurements of inflation and all which the government used to bring out, that was with respect to wholesale price index. But from 2015 onwards, the Urjit Patel committee had recommended that now it is not the WPI that you should be measuring and regulating, but the CPI. So this 2 to 6% would be what? Would be your CPI, that is CPI, that is consumer price index. Okay. Now remember few important things here. Consumer price index consists of goods plus services, whereas wholesale price index consists of goods only and not services. Now why is that the case? That is the case because services cannot generally be given wholesale. For example, here I am teaching you. Now my knowledge and the knowledge of so many teachers cannot be gathered all together and then sold it later on, right? So it's difficult. You can still manage to do that, but that generally does not happen. That is why in wholesale price index only goods are measured, whereas in CPI goods and services both are measured. Now one interesting point you should also remember here is in consumer price index the weightage of food, is high in consumer price index. Why it is high? Because it is consumer price index, it is at the consumer level. So consumer consumes a lot of food articles. Wholesale price index would be at a wholesale level, industrial products, manufacturing products. So all those products would be very high. In fact, if you look at WPI, more than 64% of manufactured industrial products are there. Whereas in CPI, close to 50% alone is the weightage of food in CPI. And here, since 64% alone is the manufactured and industrial good, the remaining is only 36%, which is again not entirely food. Okay, so that is also you should remember. Now let's look at the impact of inflation. How does inflation impact? Remember, see, impact may at times be positive or negative. We'll see how. But ultimately, if inflation keeps on increasing and it is unchecked and it increases at a higher rate and becomes hyperinflation, so ultimately inflation will not benefit anyone. But initially at lower levels, it can benefit some, it can harm some. Let us see how. So when you talk about the impact of inflation, so let's talk about the two most important or basic thing over here, the creditor and the debtor. Who is a creditor? A creditor who gives credit. Let's say for example the bank. Who is the debtor? The debtor is the person who takes the loan. For example, you or me, we are taking the loan from the bank. Okay, so these are the concept of creditor and debtor. Now the question is, who benefits during inflation? The creditor or the debtor? Let us see who benefits. So a debtor, let's say, takes a loan of rupees 100 at 10% interest rate. So after a year, the debtor has to return how many rupees to the creditor? Rupees 110. But now let's say there is an inflation in the economy. So inflation is of, again inflation calculated year on year, inflation is of 15%. So whatever you could buy in rupees 100 1 year before, now since there is an inflation of 15%, you would require 115 rupees to buy the same thing, which was 100 rupees previously, right? But remember, the debtor is giving only 110 rupees back. So the creditor is at loss. At that time, if the creditor would have not given this money, kept with them, they could have bought things worth 100 rupees. Now the creditor gets only 110 rupees back. So can the creditor buy thing worth 100 rupees, buy that thing which was worth 100 rupees previously? No, they can't, because they would require 115 rupees. Why? Because 15% is the inflation. Since the inflation is high, what has happened is, and the debtor is giving the loan back at just 10% interest rate. So the debtor is having a benefit of 5% or 5 rupees, whereas a creditor is having a loss of 5 rupees. And since the creditor had given the money for some time, the creditor should have earned some profit. So no profit is earned. On top of that, there is a loss also. I hope that's clear. Now same situation reversed, when the creditor, so we can here only clearly see the debtor is benefiting and the creditor is at a loss. Right? If instead of inflation there would have been deflation, let's say the prices have gone down, so something which you can buy at rupees 100 last year, now you can buy at rupees 90, and in that scenario the debtor is given 10% interest rate and giving 110 rupees, so the creditor will be benefited in the scenario of deflation if the prices are going down. But in the scenario of inflation, the creditor is harmed and the debtor is benefited. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now let's look at the terms related to inflation. So terms related to inflation can be inflation tax. What is inflation tax? Let's say you have 100 rupees saved with you. You kept your 100 rupees like that. Now the inflation is 10%. So now to buy the same thing which was 100 rupees previously, now you would require to give 110 rupees. Meaning what? Meaning the value of your money has eroded, has gone down. This erosion of value of the money because of inflation is the inflation tax, because it acts like a punishment or acts like a tax which has reduced the value. So what is inflation tax? Erosion of money value due to inflation is an inflation tax. Then there is a concept of inflation premium. Now here the debtor was getting benefited, so some bonus the debtor was getting of 5 rupees because the inflation was higher. So this benefit or the bonus that debtor gets due to inflation is equals to inflation premium. Yeah, so that's what it is. The bonus the debtor gets due to inflation is nothing but the inflation premium. Alright, so now having understood these concepts, let us look at the questions that have been asked on inflation. Okay, so consider the following statements. The weightage of food in consumer price index is higher than that in wholesale price index. Yes, we saw that is the case because it is at a consumer level. The consumer consumes a lot of food articles. So statement 1 is correct. Since statement 1 is correct, this goes out, only these two are remaining. So our dependency will be on statement 3. But let us look at all the statements. The WPI does not capture the changes in the prices of services which CPI captures. Absolutely right. That is one of the differences between WPI and CPI. Statement 3 says the Reserve Bank of India has now adopted WPI as its key measure of inflation and to decide on changing the key policy rates. No. For key measure of inflation and to decide changing on the key policy rates, now WPI is not used, rather now CPI is used. Right? So statement 3 is wrong, hence this is wrong, hence the correct answer is option A, that is 1 and 2. Now, with reference to the Indian economy, consider the following statements. If the inflation is too high, the Reserve Bank of India is likely to buy the government securities. Buy the government securities. So now other options, other things, other statements are not related to inflation, but I wanted to tell you that at times just the concept of inflation can get you the answer. So I have kept this question also in inflation because the first statement is talking about inflation, and just by knowing that you can actually answer it. So in inflation what happens? Too much of money is chasing too less amount of goods. So when too much of money chasing too less amount of goods, the government would want to control inflation. When the government wants to control inflation, what they have to do is they have to suck out the money from the economy. So how will they suck out the money from the economy? They will sell the government securities. What is a government security? Nothing but a piece of paper. This is a piece of paper. This is the government security. You come up with a government security. Let's say I give you a government security of 1 crore. So you give me 1 crore rupees. So what I have done? I have sucked out 1 crore from the economy. Right? So the government sells the government security to the people so that money is sucked out from the economy. So here it is saying, if the inflation is too high, Reserve Bank of India is likely to buy the government security? No. It is likely to sell the government security. If you buy the government security back from the people, what will happen? You will take the piece of paper back from the people and you will be giving them the money. So that would be giving more money to the economy, leading to more inflation. So you would not be doing that. You would be rather selling the government securities, meaning giving this piece of paper to the people and taking money from that. So the money is sucked out from the economy. So statement 1 here is absolutely wrong. And hence this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and this is the only right answer. Okay. With reference to inflation in India, which of the following statements is correct? Controlling the inflation in India is the responsibility of the government only. Whenever the word only comes, be very aware. More often than not, it tends to be wrong. So think twice before making such statements to be correct. Is it the responsibility of the government only? No, rather it's the responsibility of the RBI. The Reserve Bank of India has no role in controlling inflation. No, rather it has been given the role to control inflation. So this is wrong. Sorry. Yeah. So this is wrong. This is wrong. Decreased money circulation in the circulation helps in controlling inflation. Increased money circulation helps in controlling inflation. Now, even if you were confused in option A and B, you should know that the answer should come from option C and D only. Why? That is because these two are completely opposite options. Completely opposite options. So one of them will be right. Let's see which one. Decreased money circulation helps in controlling inflation? Yes. As I said, inflation is what? More money chasing less goods. So to control inflation, what you have to do? Remove the money from the economy. That means decrease the money circulation in the economy, and that will help inflation. Increase money circulation will not help inflation. It will create more inflation. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now, next, consider the following statements. Inflation benefits the debtors. Yes, we saw that. Inflation benefits the bondholders. Not necessarily. Why? If the bond is an inflation indexed bond, then it will help. What is an inflation indexed bond? Inflation indexed bond will give you return of inflation plus X%. So if inflation is 0, you will get 0 plus X%. So your real increase would be of X%. If inflation is 20%, you will get 20% plus X%. So your return would be 20 plus X%. So when inflation is there, inflation index bonds would really help. So inflation would have benefited the inflation index bond holders. But will it benefit all the general bond holders? The bond holders which are not having inflation index bonds? No, it will not. Hence statement 2 is wrong. Hence only one only is the right answer. Next question. The next question says that a rapid increase in the rate of inflation is sometimes attributed to the base effect. Now what is the base effect? I'll tell you what the base effect is first. Let's understand the concept of base effect. So I hope we all watch cricket or have watched cricket at least at some point. Definitely we would have, at least the majority of us. So what happens is, let's say I am playing for India. Okay. So I play the first match. Let's say you are playing for India. So you play the first match and you score 1 run and you got out. So what is your average? Your average is 1. Okay. Now someone else also played. This is, let's say this is Mr. X. This is Miss Y. Okay. Miss Y also played the first match and she scored 100 runs and got out. So her average is 100. Clear? Now I ask both of you to increase your batting averages. These averages are what? These are batting averages. I ask both of you to increase your batting averages by, let's say, 10%. I ask both of you to increase your batting averages by 10%. So, or let's say I ask both of you to increase your batting averages by 100%. Okay. So to increase the batting average by 100%, how much Mr. X has to score? If Mr. X, right now the average of Mr. X is 1. So the Mr. X has to increase the batting average by 100%. That means from 1, Mr. X has to go to 2. How will Mr. X go to 2? By scoring just 3 runs. When Mr. X scores just 3 runs, his total runs would be 4 runs. In how many matches? In 2 matches. And average will be what? Average will be 4 runs upon 2 matches, which gives you 2. So from 1, the average will increase to 2. Now for Miss Y to increase the batting average by 100%, she has to increase the batting average from 100 to 200. So how can she do that? She will have to score 300 runs. 300 runs, so that the total is 400 and the number of matches is 2. So that the average would be 400, that is the total runs upon 2 matches, that will be equal to 200. So just imagine Miss Y to increase the batting average by 100%. She is required, sorry, it's not clear. She is required to score 300 runs. And for Mr. X to increase the batting average by 100%, he is required to score just 3 runs. Now, why this huge discrepancy? Because their base was different. After first match, the base of Mr. X was 1 run and the base of Miss Y was of 100 runs. So when the base is bigger, to have a smaller increase in percentage on that bigger base itself would require a lot of doing. But if the base is shorter, then even a slight increase would lead to a huge percentage increase. And that is what has happened recently during the COVID period also, when the GDP was not increasing. So the base remains low in the consecutive years. And then when things went proper, the percentage increase in GDP looked very high, but that was due to a lower base. Okay, so that is the base effect. So they are asking us what is base effect. It is the impact of the drastic deficiency of supply due to failure of crops? No. It is the impact of the surge in demand due to rapid economic growth? No. It is the impact of the price levels of the previous years on the calculation of inflation rate? Yes. It is the impact of the price levels, the batting average of the previous year on the calculation of inflation, or the batting average of this year. Okay, so this is the correct option. Next, economic growth is usually accompanied by deflation, no. Stagflation, no. Hyperinflation, no. Inflation, yes. It is generally accompanied by inflation, remember this. But now we have been introduced to a new concept. The new concept is that of deflation. So we will look at two similar concepts, that is disinflation and write it better, disinflation and deflation. Okay, so inflation is what? The general increase, the general sustained increase in the prices of a basket of goods and services. Now, if let's say inflation, a thing costs rupees 100, there is an inflation of 10%, so now it costs rupees 110. Now there is an inflation of 20%, so now it costs 132. What is happening? There is inflation and the rate of inflation is also increasing. But that need not necessarily happen. At times it can so happen that from rupees 100 it went to 110, that means 10% increase. But afterwards it became, let's say, 116. That means only around 6% increase. So what has happened? There is still inflation, but the rate of inflation has gone down. So when the rate of inflation goes down, we say that there is disinflation. So disinflation is nothing but reduction in the rate of inflation. So inflation is still there, but the rate at which it is increasing has gone down. So that would be your disinflation. Then what is deflation? Deflation is actually the complete opposite of inflation. So what is deflation? It is the decrease in the general level of prices. Meaning if something was of rupees 100 previously, now it will be of less than 100. So decrease in the general level of prices would be your deflation, completely opposite to inflation, whereas reduction in the rate of inflation would be your disinflation. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now in India, which one of the following is responsible for the maintaining of price stability by controlling inflation? Reserve Bank of India. It has the responsibility to do so, right? Now, I think this question is a repeat. We have already done that the weightage of food in consumer price index is higher. WPI does not capture changes in the price of services, which CPI does. And RBI has not adopted WPI. WPI was earlier. Now RBI has adopted CPI. So statement 1 is right, 2 is right, 3 is wrong. So the correct answer would be 1 and 2 only. Now, a rise in the general level of prices may be caused by, so what they are asking? They are asking inflation. Inflation may be caused by what? So inflation may be caused by an increase in the money supply, yes. A decrease in the aggregate level of output, yes. If the supply is less, then also inflation will happen. An increase in the effective demand, yes. So either if the demand increases, inflation will be there. If the supply comes down, then also inflation will be there. If the amount of money increases, then also inflation will be there. So all three are correct, right? So this completes the questions of inflation also. So today we have seen national income accounting, in that GDP, GNP, NDP, NNP, then human capital formation, social capital formation, then inflation, which is a very important chapter. Going forward, we'll be seeing other topics, revising other topics, as well as looking at their previous year questions as well. So in the previous session, we had seen national income accounting, the concepts like GDP, GNP, NDP, NNP, so on and so forth. In today's session, we will be moving ahead and we will be focusing on banking in India. We'll understand certain concepts related to banking in India, the important concepts, and then we'll look into the questions of banking in India. Right. Now, please understand that banking in India is one of the most important topics in Indian economy. Almost 1/3 of the questions come from banking in India. In the last 13 years, there have been total 193 questions in the Indian economy, and around 63 questions have been from banking in India, which is close to 1/3 of the questions. So it holds a lot of importance. What we'll do is understand the important concepts related to banking in India and then keep solving the questions that have been asked previously. So these concepts will help us answer those questions. And also at times some questions which we will be answering may come across some new concepts also, some different concepts also. So as and when we solve that, we will understand those concepts as well. So welcome to Legacy IAS, and let's get started with the revision for UPSC Prelims 2024. So banking in India. First things first, why the need of the banks? The need of the bank, if you want to understand, go back to history. Historically, why would there be a need of bank? When human beings were there on the earth, we were hunter-gatherers, hunting and gathering food, that's it. Afterwards, when we settled down a bit, there was farming which started, but that farming was like a subsistence farming. Meaning, whatever I want, I am growing only that much, that is it, nothing more, nothing less. But after a while, when efficiency increased in production of agriculture, then there was a surplus. Surplus started happening. When there is a surplus, I have certain additional thing. So now when I have certain additional thing, what will I do with that? I will exchange that with you. For what? For something additional that you have. So initially, what was there was the barter system. In barter system, goods were exchanged. So let's say I have additional rice, you have additional wheat, I give you X amount of rice, you give me Y amount of wheat. Correct? But what's the problem in this? The problem in this is, I should want what you have additional, and you should want what I have additional. So this transaction can only happen when you want rice which I have additionally and when I want wheat which you have additionally. Just take for example, if I want wheat and you have wheat, but you do not want rice, you want jawar. So will you exchange with me? Of course not. So at the same time, if let's say you want rice, I have additional rice, but I don't want wheat, I want vegetables. So will I exchange with you? Absolutely not. So when the exchange will happen? Only when I want wheat and you have additional wheat, and I have additional rice and you want additional rice. So I should want what you additionally have, you should want what I additionally have. This is known as the double coincidence of demand. The double coincidence of demand needs to be there. If this double coincidence of demand is not there, there will be a problem. So this problem we faced, and once we face this problem, how do we resolve this problem? By bank? No, not banks yet. This problem, guys, would be resolved by the concept of one particular thing which probably is the most important thing, arguably the most important thing in the world, and that is the concept of money. So what is money? Money is the medium of exchange. Medium of exchange. You use it for exchange. Now how does money solve the problem of the issue of barter system of double coincidence of demand? I have additional rice. You have additional wheat. Now I want wheat from you, but you don't want rice from me. So what I do, instead of giving you rice, I give you money and I take your wheat. Now the transaction will go ahead. Why? Because now you have money. And let's say you did not want rice, you wanted vegetables. So what you can do is you can preserve that money with you, and whenever you come across a vegetable vendor, a vegetable trader, you can give the money to the vegetable trader and get the vegetables from them. Hence, money as a medium of exchange has solved the problem of the barter system. Now, we have still not come across the reason as to why banks have come into existence. So we saw that the money has solved the barter system issue. But then why the banks came into existence? That is because, let's say if I want to buy a house right now, I do not have enough amount of money. But I know every month I earn a lot of amount, so that if I save for 15 years, I can buy a house. But then I'll have to wait for 15 years. So that's when banks come into the picture. Bank says, Toha, you don't have to wait for 15 years. What we can do is, we will give you loan. We will give you the loan. You take the loan, you buy the house and keep paying us installments. Right? So now this loan, please understand this, that this loan I could have taken from someone else also. Let's say my friend, that would be from the informal sector. An earlier informal sector of lending was there before the banks came in. But the problem is, I may have a friend who's ready to give me the loan and I will return it to them, but at times I may not have a friend who's ready to give. In my friend circle, maybe no one has money, or even if they have money, they don't have trust that I will return XYZ reasons. It can so happen that I just crossed a person on the street and that person has additional money, but I don't know them, so that person cannot give me money. Right? So the bank would connect me with that person, not directly, indirectly. I'll tell you how. Let's say for example, there is Miss X. There is Miss X who wants loan, money. There is Miss Y who has surplus money. Now Miss X does not know Miss Y. So she cannot ask for money, and even if she does, Miss Y will not know any background, any detail or anything. How will she give the money? So what happens is, Miss Y has surplus money. She invests that as fixed deposit in the bank. Now the bank has Miss Y's money. And now Miss X comes to the bank for asking for loan. So this Miss Y's money, the bank gives as loan to Miss X. How the bank is able to trust? Because the bank is going to ask you for your pay slip, for your Aadhaar card, identification, address proof, undertaking. They will give you certain things and ensure that yes, you are capable enough to repay, so I can give you the loan. So they will give the loan to you. So the bank is acting as an intermediary. The bank acts as an intermediary over here. Now, why would the bank do that? Can you think of the reason as to why the banks would be ready to do that? Because banks also should have certain motives to do that. The motives that the bank has over here is profit. So how will they earn profit? It's very simple to earn profit. What they'll do is, remember Miss Y has kept certain additional money with the bank as, let's say, fixed deposit. So the bank will give Miss Y the fixed deposit she has kept. They will give her, let's say, 7% of interest. And Miss X, who has taken a loan, that loan will be given to Miss X at 14%. So what is the difference? The difference is of 7%. And now this 7% is the revenue that the banks will generate. 14 minus 7 gives you 7%. From this 7%, all the cost, implementation, management cost, employee salary, everything will come out. Plus also the fact that if 100 people are taking loan, all 100 people will not return the loan. So some losses will also be there, that will also be accounted for here. Plus certain profits of the bank. So this 7% will have all these things included in that. Now, there is another thing. That is that the bank need not necessarily give the loans from the money which the depositors have deposited in the bank. Okay, so how else can they do that? What they can instead do is, instead of Miss Y, they will take the fixed deposit from Miss Y also. It's not that they will say no to her. But if the banks want more money to give it as loans, then what will the banks do? The banks can also go to the RBI and get money from the RBI, right, for giving more loans. Now when the banks go to the RBI for getting more money from the RBI, RBI will also not give money at free. RBI will also charge some interest rate, and that interest rate is repo rate. We'll study it later. So RBI will also charge certain interest rate. That interest rate is, let's say, 7.5% or 6%, something or the other. So at this percent, the bank will get the loan from the RBI, and after further calculation of the cost of the cost, for example, and at the same time, if you give loan, some may not give it back, plus profits. After doing all that, they will again come up with certain interest rate, let's say 13 or 14 or 15%, at which they will be giving loan to Miss X or someone else. So what is the source of money which the bank gets for giving out loans? Either the people giving fixed deposit or the RBI is also a source of money. So at the same time, if banks are in dire need of money, their liquidity issue is there. So RBI again at that time can provide money to the bank, and since RBI is the one providing money to the bank, RBI is also known as the bank of last resort. When the banks do not understand, do not have money, do not know what to do and from where to get money, they can reach out to the RBI, and in such situation RBI provides money to this bank. And since that's the last option for the bank which is being addressed by the RBI, RBI is known as the lender of last resort. When no one can help out the bank, it's the RBI that is going to help out the bank, and hence RBI is known as the lender of last resort. In addition to this, RBI is also the regulator of the banking system. Meaning it is regulating the banks. Okay, it is regulating the banks. I hope that's clear. Now, why the need of bank? It is clear. What are banks? It is an intermediary. It is clear. What are the types of bank? There can be scheduled banks and there can be non-scheduled banks. What is the difference between scheduled and non-scheduled? Scheduled banks are mentioned in the schedule of the RBI Act 1934. These banks are not mentioned in it. Okay, sorry. These banks are not mentioned. These banks are mentioned in the schedule of the RBI Act. Now, what are the functions of the bank? The functions of the bank is to give loans, give credits, allow people to deposit money, have various other instruments, provide credit card, provide debit card, provide internet. Now all those internet digitization and all is also there. So provide internet banking system, debit card, checks, demand drafts, DDs, now net banking, etc., etc., and various other instruments, financial instruments are provided by the banks. Now, as I said that RBI, the function of RBI is also to regulate the banks, right? So how will RBI regulate the banks? RBI will regulate the banks with the help of certain instruments. Now what regulation is actually required? The kind of regulation required here is very simple. Very simple as in very straightforward, not that simple as such. See, let's say bank has rupees 100 as fixed deposit. And the bank also has another rupees 100 as demand deposit. So first things first, the bank cannot use this 100 rupees because this is demand deposit. Demand deposit means as and when the consumer or the customer wants the money back, the bank has to pay them back. So this money you cannot utilize to give loans. This money you can utilize to give loans, the fixed deposit one, but not completely. Why? Because if you know that if you open a fixed deposit in any bank, let's say for 5 years, after 5 years it will mature, you will get the benefits, the interest and everything, but you can break that fixed deposit also. The bank may charge certain amount of penalty and may not give you the interest that is earned, or give you lesser amount and charge a penalty and then return the remaining amount. So some of them would break the fixed deposit also. That means you cannot give this money completely as loan, and you cannot give this money as loan at all, and you cannot give this money as loan completely. To some extent yes, to some extent you cannot. To some extent you have to safeguard. Right. So our interest is in this. This too you anyhow cannot give. This some amount you can give. Now what is that some amount is nothing but decided by the RBI. How is that decided? Let us see. It is decided by with the help of CRR and SLR. So the RBI would ask you to keep certain amount of money aside so that you don't end up giving the entire loan. Right. But now the problem is, if I have 100 rupees to give loan to, you ask me to keep 10 rupees aside. If I keep that 10 rupees aside with me only, the problem is after some time when I exhaust 90 rupees and someone wants more 10 rupees loan, I may end up giving them. So keeping that money aside with the bank is not necessarily the answer. Another thing need to be done here. What is that? The RBI would then ask me as a bank to keep my money not with myself but with the RBI only. So when a bank keeps its money, a part of its money with the RBI, that money is the cash reserve ratio. So what is cash reserve ratio? The amount kept by bank with the RBI. That is cash reserve ratio. So what is statutory liquidity ratio? Similar but slightly different. Amount kept aside by bank with itself. So some of the trust RBI has in bank by asking them to keep certain amount of money aside by themselves only, but some amount they need to keep aside with the Reserve Bank of India for more assurity. So this is CRR, this is SLR, this is how the banks are regulated by the RBI. What is capital adequacy ratio? Capital adequacy ratio is nothing but the amount of capital that you have to address any risk that you may be having. The banks develop a lot of capital, a lot of assets, right? But at the same time the bank gives a lot of loans. Some of the loans may not come back, so that's a risk also. So how much capital do you have? Up to what limit can the capital which you have can address the risk that is there is your capital adequacy ratio. Higher the capital and lower the risk, higher will be the capital adequacy ratio. Lower the capital and higher the risk, lower will be the capital adequacy ratio. So it is nothing but the capital you have divided by the risk you are facing. Okay, so if the capital is 100, risk is 10, your capital adequacy ratio is 10. So your bank is very much capable to address its risk. In fact, it can address the risk 10 times. If your capital is 1, risk is 10, you can address only 0.1. Sorry, you can address only 0.1 times. That means only 10% of the risk you can address. So this is an issue, right? This is a good situation. So that is what is meant by capital adequacy ratio. Now coming on to repo rate and reverse repo rate. Repo rate is nothing but, remember I said the banks can borrow money from the Reserve Bank of India also. So repo rate is the rate at which the RBI lends money to the banks. That is your repo rate. Now, Why is RBI lending money? Because these banks wanted, because these banks are short on the money and they want to give more loans, so they want more money. They go to the RBI and get the money at an interest rate which is known as the repo rate. But it can also happen that, let's say, a bank has a lot of money with them and no one is ready to take loans from them. In such scenario, what will the banks do? In such a scenario, the banks will also want to earn some money with the money they already have. If they keep it with themselves, the money will not grow, right? The value will keep on going down due to inflation. So if banks have additional money and no one is ready to take the loan, so what they'll do, some amount of money they will keep it with the RBI. When they keep this money with the RBI will give them some interest rate. The interest rate which the RBI gives to the bank when the bank park their additional money with RBI, that interest rate is your reverse repo rate. So reverse repo rate is interest given by RBI to the bank when the banks park their money with RBI. Clear? So that is your reverse repo rate. Now, having said that, let's move on to the questions. Whatever concepts we have understood, based on that we'll be able to solve a lot of questions. Some of the concepts may come in as new, and as and when they come in the questions, we will ensure that we understand those concepts as well. Alright, so let's get started. The very first question says, which one of the following activities of the Reserve Bank of India is considered to be a part of sterilization? Now let's understand the concept of sterilization. What is sterilization? Sterilization is nothing but managing the inflow and outflow of money. If there is too much money in the market, the RBI would try to suck it out. If there is too less money in the market, the RBI would like to pump it up. Managing the inflow and outflow of the money, or the presence of money in the market, is nothing but to manage that you need to do sterilization operation at times, right? Having understood this concept, let us now see what the correct answer would be. We can get to the correct answer just by mere elimination. Regulating the functions of NBFCs, non-banking financial institutions. No, it is nothing near the management of inflow and outflow. Debt and cash management of the central government. No, this is rather the concept of financial management. It is like the activity of a chartered accountant. The chartered accountant, what they do? They manage the asset and liability of an individual, of a firm. So when that is being done for, let's say, the government, again the operation is same. This is also not. Oversight of settlement and payment system. What is settlement and payment system? Whenever I pay through UPI, net banking, the payment gets settled. Now having an oversight on that is nothing but an oversight or regulation or monitoring operation, which is again not related to sterilization. So this is also wrong. Now there is only last option, conducting open market operations. Yes, this, guys, is sterilization. Why this is sterilization? Let's take an example of an open market operation. Let's say that there is a too much rupee in the market, because of which there is high inflation. RBI needs to carry out sterilization operation in order to reduce inflation. So what the RBI would want to do? Suck out rupee from the market. How can the RBI suck out rupee from the market? By selling government securities. So the RBI will sell government security. Government security is nothing but a piece of paper which the RBI will give to the public and take money from them. So when RBI is giving paper to them and taking money from them, RBI is basically sucking out money. That is one of the open market operation, which is a part of sterilization. I hope that is absolutely clear. Moving ahead, which of the following is not included in the assets not included in the assets of a commercial bank in India? Option A, advances. Advances are included. What are advances? When a bank is giving loan to you, bank is giving advances to you. Now that is an asset. Why it is an asset? Because that is going to generate revenue for the bank, that is going to generate interest for the bank, profit for the bank. So this is an asset. If the bank does investment somewhere, that is also an asset because it will give you return. Money at call and short notice is also sort of a loan. What is money at call and short notice? Call money and short notice money, for example, call money is money given overnight, for 1 day, 2 day. That sorry, that is your call or short notice money. Okay, at times what happens is big firms, for example, let's say a big corporate, the salary date is approaching on 28th. The corporate's bill is pending from the client and it is yet to be transferred to the company, but the company still wants to pay to their employee on time. So they use the facility of money at call or short notice money from the banks, wanting money only for 3-4 days, 1 day, 2 day, overnight. An immediate requirement for a very short period of time is money at call or and short notice money. Now here also the banks will charge interest to the company, whoever is borrowing the money. So this will also act as an asset. The correct answer here is deposit. Deposits is not an asset. If I am depositing money with the bank needs to return that to me. And this deposit is generically written, so it includes demand deposit as well. If I have demand deposit in the bank, I deposit right now, half an hour later I want it back, I should get it back. So remember I said rupees 100 as fixed and rupees 100 at demand deposit. So demand deposit money cannot be utilized for giving loan. So deposits will not be included in the assets of commercial bank in India. I hope that's clear. Moving ahead, capital adequacy ratio. So now we did the capital adequacy, let's say capital asset or what, some concept we already did. It's a similar concept or it's the same concept. Sorry. Yes. Capital adequacy ratio, CAR. We did that. So now they are talking about that exact same thing, that is capital adequacy ratio. Is the amount that the banks have to maintain in the form of their own funds to offset any loss that the banks incur if the account holders fail to repay. Risk. You have given loan, some loans may not come back. So what is the amount of risk you have? X amount. How much capital do you have? Let's say Y amount. So you have Y amount of capital to take care of X amount of risk. So capital adequacy ratio is what? The amount that the bank have to maintain in the form of their own funds to offset any losses that may incur if the account holders are not repaying. So this is correct. CAR is decided by each individual bank. Just imagine if you leave it on the whims and fancies of individual banks to decide, they may say, okay, I will keep it as 0. So it is not for the banks to decide. There is a regulator, that is RBI. Right? It's the job of the regulator. Individual banks will not be deciding it. So the correct answer is option A. One only. Which one of the following best describes the term merchant discount rate, sometimes seen in news? I have included certain topics like this also, which you will not find anywhere in the book. So it is important to discuss this topic. What is merchant discount rate? So if you see, actually few years back, the let's say debit cards, let's say 10-15 years back, debit cards were not that common. ATMs were not that common. Payment through debit card was not that common. Online payment was not that common. Digital transaction, net banking was not that common. So 15 years back, when you would go to a shop to purchase anything, any good or service, let's say you have gone out to purchase a shirt. What happens is the shirt is of, let's say, 1000 rupees. Now you bring out your debit card and you are about to pay with the debit card to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper would have told you at that time that, sir, madam, or XYZ, whoever it is, कि if you pay through the debit card, so this rupees 1000 shirt would cost you rupees 1025. That means 2.5% extra. Are you okay? If you're okay, let's pay it. You'll say okay. So what happens is 1025 is charged, 25 rupees additional is charged. This additional money is nothing but the merchant discount. Now the word is discount, but it is not a discount as such. It is an additional fee which you are paying. Why were you required to pay the fees? Because banking system, net banking system, ATM cards, ATM machines, digital transactions were not that common, very less frequently used, but still you have to maintain an entire ecosystem. To maintain that, you need some money, right? So that money is being charged to the merchant, and that merchant is transferring that to you, and hence you are required to pay that additional amount, and that additional amount is nothing but the merchant discount. So knowing that, let us solve this question. Which of the following is merchant discount? Incentive given by a bank to merchant for accepting payments through debit cards pertaining to the bank. Now it's not an incentive that is given by the bank to the merchant, rather the bank is asking more money. So do not get confused by the term discount. So this is not the case. Amount paid back by bank to their customers when they use debit cards for financial transactions for purchasing goods and services. No, again it's a charge which they are incurring on us. The charge to a merchant, yes. The charge to a merchant by a bank for accepting payments from his customers through the bank's debit card. Since the merchant has accepted the payment from the customer through the bank's debit card, so that merchant would be charged. Remember, the merchant is getting charged, but the merchant is transferring that charge onto the customer. This is the correct option, but let us see the last one. Incentive is given by the government to merchants for promoting digital payments by their customers through point of scale machines and debit cards. No. So it is neither an incentive, it is nor the amount that is paid back, it is nor incentive anything. It is rather a charge, it is rather a fees that is charged, which is your merchant discount. I think this is a repeat question. Let's move on. Which one of the following statements correctly describes the meaning of legal tender, that is money? Legal tender money. So what is a legal tender money? Okay. The money which is tendered in courts of law? No. That's not. This is probably the worst option, very easily identifiable that this is wrong. The money which a creditor is under compulsion to accept in settlement of his claims? Yes. For example, if I take a loan from the bank, I cannot go and return. If I have taken a loan of 1 lakh rupees and I have to repay it, let's say, I cannot return 1 lakh worth of rice. I can do that, but then the bank has to accept it. But will the bank accept it? Of course not. Where will they place it? And banks do not deal in rice and trading and all these things. So banks cannot accept it. Banks can reject it. If the banks reject it, I can't do anything. But if I go and I want to pay the bank, the loan of the bank in Indian rupees, let's say 100 rupee notes, all 100 rupees note or all 10 rupee notes in cash, the bank cannot say, no, sorry boss, I will not take it, please transfer it online. Sorry boss, I won't take it, I want dollars. No, you cannot reject that, because that is a legal tender. So the meaning of legal tender has come from this fact only, that if you have taken some credit for someone and you are about to pay it, the legal tender would be the money in which when you pay, the person cannot reject it or say no to that particular kind of payment. Then that payment is said to be done in legal tender. So it is nothing but the money which a creditor is under compulsion to accept, meaning they cannot reject it in the settlement of their claim. Clear? Other options are the bank money in the form of check drafts? No. Metallic money in the circulating in the economy? No. Which one of the following links all the ATMs in India? Now this is a very factual question. It is the National Payments Corporation of India, that is NPCI, which links all the ATMs in India. When the Reserve Bank of India reduces the statutory liquidity ratio SLR by 50 basis points, as in by 0.5%, which of the following is likely to happen? Now, this is a very logical answer. Now think of it. What is SLR? Statutory liquidity ratio is the amount that the bank is required to keep with themselves in the form of any liquid asset, for example, gold. So if earlier, let's say the SLR was X%, now it is X minus 0.5%. So SLR has now been reduced. So when SLR is reduced, that means what? That means that the bank will have more money to give out as loans, right? So when the bank has more money to give out as loans, let's see what will happen. India's GDP growth rate increases drastically, not necessarily. Also guys, in UPSC, whenever there is a use of the word drastically, be very careful. Generally these options would be wrong. Foreign institutional investors may bring more capital into our economy, not necessarily. So this is wrong, this is wrong. Scheduled commercial banks may cut their lending rates. This is possible. Scheduled commercial bank may cut their lending rates. It may reduce the liquidity to the banking system. It may drastically, again drastically what? No, drastically it will not reduce, plus it will drastically reduce the liquidity to the banking system. No, it is rather increasing the liquidity in the banking system, because now the banks have more money to loan out. So this is also wrong. So the correct answer is this. Scheduled commercial banks may cut their lending rates. Why will scheduled commercial banks may cut their lending rates? Now they have more money to play with. So with more money they can make more profits even if they give at low interest rates. Hence this is the most appropriate answer. Okay, let's move on to the next question. The question states, what are the facility or facilities the beneficiaries can get from the services of business correspondents or bank sathi in branchless areas? So who are business correspondents? See, in India there are a lot of unbanked and underbanked areas. Unbanked areas meaning there are no banks. Underbanked areas meaning there may be a bank or two very far off, okay, and may not provide all the instruments, all the services, very limited services will be provided. So that is the concept of unbanked and underbanked area. Whenever there is an unbanked or underbanked area, what happens is there would be less savings in the bank because the banks are not close by, very difficult to take loans and all those stuffs, all those things may happen. Now either the bank can open branches over there, but that would require a complete physical infrastructure, the employees, everything. But instead the government came out with a concept of bank sathi, that is business correspondents, wherein these bank sathis will visit that particular region one fine day and visit door to door and see who needs what and what is required and do all those activities and come back. So it is like banking coming to your doorstep, bank coming to your doorstep. That is the idea. Now knowing that, let's solve the question. Which are the facilities the beneficiaries can get from the services of the business correspondents? It enables the beneficiaries to draw their subsidies and social security benefits in their villages. Yes. It enables the beneficiaries in rural areas to make deposits and withdrawals. Yes. So when you go to the bank, you can do these things. It's just reverse. Now the banks are coming to you. So again, you can do all these things. That's it. The things which you could do while going to the bank, now you could do by the bank representative coming to you. So the functions remain the same. The manner is just different. That's all. If the RBI decides to adopt an expansionist monetary policy, what is expansionist monetary policy? Spending more money in the market, that is expansionary, right? Reducing the interest rate so that more and more, when you reduce the interest rate, the money becomes cheaper because you can buy, get money at a cheaper rate of interest as loans, right? So when money becomes cheaper, more and more people would want money and spend it. So you are spending more. So expansionist policy, as in the interest rate or the repo rate is going to go down. So if the RBI decides to adopt an expansionist monetary policy, which of the following would it not do? Would it not do? Not. It will not do. Cut and optimize the statutory liquidity ratio. Cut and optimize. It will do that. It will cut the statutory liquidity ratio. If earlier it was X, it will reduce it to X minus 0.5, so that more money is available with the bank. And we saw if more money is available with the bank will reduce the interest rate, more money gets available with the people. So it will actually do this. Okay, so statement 1 is wrong. Since statement 1 is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and this is the right answer. But still, let us see the other options. Increase the marginal standing facility rate. Yes, it will not do this. Why? Because marginal standing facility rate affects the rate at which the banks give you loan. If marginal standing facility rate is high, the rate at which banks will give you loan will be high. So if RBI increases the marginal standing facility rate, then the banks will start giving you loan at a higher rate. Since they will give you at a higher rate, money will become costlier and you will want less money and less spending will be there. So this is something which the bank will not do. Let me change this. This is 1, this is 2 and this is 3. Statement 1 was wrong, so only this was left. But still we are looking at other statements. Statement 2 is correct. 1 was wrong, 2 is correct. 3 has to be wrong, but let's see. Cut the bank rate and repo rate. Now, cutting the bank rate and the repo rate. This also it will do. I said that it will bring down the repo rate. Right? And here also it is saying cutting the bank rate and repo rate. Yes, this will also do. But the question asks what it will not do. So it will not do this particular thing. Rest 1 and 2 it will do. Only statement 2 it will not do. Hence the correct answer is option B, 2 only. Now, Indian government bond yields are influenced by which of the following? Actions of the United States Federal Reserve. Okay. Actions of the Reserve Bank of India, okay. Inflation and short-term interest rates, okay. All of them. Now let us understand how all of them. Okay. So let's start with the easiest one. Inflation and short-term interest rates. Inflation and short-term interest rates. If there is inflation, the bond yield will be impacted. If the bond yield, let's say the bond yield was 10%. Interest rate is inflation is 15%. Bond yield is already impacted of the bonds which are already sold. That's point number 1. Point number 2, the new bonds which will be brought in would be at a higher interest rate. So inflation would affect the interest rate of the bond. Actions of the RBI, Reserve Bank of India, of course, if RBI increases the rate, so rate of all the financial instruments should generally increase. If the RBI increases the repo rate, all the instruments rate will increase, be it fixed deposit, be it loans, be it personal loans, home loans, vehicle loan, etc., anything, be it savings account. In savings account also you get some amount of interest, even that will increase. Be it bond. So every rate will correspondingly should increase. It need not generally increase because sometimes the banks may not do that, because then less people would want loan. But generally the banks also do it. The banks also increase the rate because they would also be getting at a higher rate from the Reserve Bank, so they will also increase the interest rate. So when this increases, all the instruments rate will increase. So this was correct, this is also correct. Now the first one, actions of the United States Federal Reserve. This will also affect, not directly but indirectly. How will it affect? If the Federal Reserve is providing very high interest rate in USA on the bonds or on any other deposit, people would want to invest in US. So money from India and every other country will fly away to US, right? And less number of people would want to be depositing the money in India and other countries. So the instruments would want to become more attractive for the customer to attract them to back to India, right? So that is how it affects. Secondly, if the federal bank reduces the interest rate, So less and less people would want to invest in USA, and the money will come out from USA to India and other countries, and more money will be chasing instruments in India. So even if the bond yield is less, still people would invest more in India because USA the rate is even lesser. So whether the USA Federal Reserve increases or decreases, it is going to have an indirect impact on Indian financial instruments, and bond is one such instrument. So hence all are correct. The money multiplier in an economy increases with which of the following? Increase in the cash reserve ratio in the banks? No. If cash reserve ratio increases, that means more money the banks have to keep with the RBI, so less money in the market. Increase in statutory liquidity ratio? No. Again, this is the amount they have to keep with themselves, so less money in the market. Increasing the banking habit of the people? Yes. Because if you keep the money in the rice container at home, it's not in the market, it's not going to multiply, it is going to stay there, it is not going to change hands. But when you put it in the bank can give out loans, it will change hands, it will have a multiplier impact. Increase in the population of the country, just by increase in population need not necessarily increase the money multiplier effect. So the correct answer is option C, that is increase in the banking habit of the people. Next, in India, the central banks function as the lender of last resort. We saw this concept. Lender of last resort usually refers to which of the following? Lending to trade and industry? No. Providing liquidity to the banks having a temporary crisis? Yes. So 1 is wrong, 2 is right. So if 2 is right, this will also go away. Let's look at 3. Lending to government to finance budgetary deficits? No. The RBI can do that, but because of this, it is not known as lender of last resort. It is known as lender of last resort because it provides liquidity to the banks having a temporary crisis. So the correct answer is option B. Now, consider the following statements. Tight monetary policy meaning the repo rate going up, so that the policy is tight, so that money is costlier, so less money people would want to spend. It's a contractionary policy of US Federal could lead to capital flight. So if tight monetary policy is there, that means US Federal Bank has increased the repo rate, so the returns on US financial instruments would be higher. So money from India and other countries would fly back to USA to be invested there. So this is correct. So this option is gone. Capital flight may increase the interest cost of firms with existing external commercial borrowings. Now when the capital is flying away, right, but you had already taken loans previously only, right, and the capital is flying away, so less capital is available, so of course the interest rates would go up. When repo rate goes up, everything generally should go up. So this is also correct. 1 and 2 is correct, so this is gone. Devaluation of domestic currency decreases the currency risk associated with external commercial borrowings. It says devaluation of domestic currency, meaning earlier if $1 equals to rupees 50, now $1 equals to rupees 100. It is saying that devaluation of domestic currency decreases the currency risk associated with the external commercial borrowings. No, it increases the risk. Let's say you borrowed $1. If there was no interest rate, you have to return the $1. How much will you return? 50 rupees. But let's say you borrowed $1, but after a while the currency depreciated, Indian rupee depreciated and $1 became 100 rupees. So now if you have to return $1, you will have to return 100 rupees and not 50. So due to the depreciation of the currency, it is devaluation of domestic currency decreases the risk associated with external commercial borrowings? No, it increases the risk associated with ECBs. ECBs are external commercial borrowings. So statement 3 is wrong. The moment 3 is wrong, the correct answer is A, 1 and 2 only. Okay, so this was your banking and the topics, the concepts related to it, as well as the previous year questions related to it. In the next section, we will be looking at financial market, stock market. We'll be looking at different sectors of economy, industrial sector, service sector, agriculture sectors. So in the coming sessions, we will be looking at the remaining part. So now we'll be continuing with our revision sessions, and today we'll be looking at the economic sectors. Now, what all will come in the economic sectors? Of course, the primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector, that is agriculture, industry and services. A lot of questions. Again, this is again a very important section. Again, almost 1/3 of questions are asked on the economic sectors if you look at the trend of the last 13-15 years. Now in this segment or in this section, you will have more of factual questions as well and less of conceptual questions. Okay, so and what we'll do in this section is we'll keep going solving the questions, and during the questions, whenever we come across any concept or anything in which understanding is required, we will ensure that we get the comprehensive understanding of that as well, in addition to solving the PYQs. Alright, so let's begin with the very first question, which again looks very factual. So consider the question says that consider the following statements. Consider the following statements. Statement 1 is India, despite having uranium deposits, so it is saying India is having uranium deposits, but it depends on coal for most of its electricity production. So this is correct. This is correct that India depends on its electricity production. Now you need to think whether this is also correct that India has uranium deposits. Yes, India does have uranium deposits as well. Maybe not too much. There is another concern with the uranium deposit that India has. We'll see that. Second statement actually talks about it. Second statement says that uranium enriched to the extent of at least 60% is required for the production of electricity. So now, India has uranium deposits but still depends mostly on coal. That is correct. So why even after having uranium, India is depending upon coal? That can be because uranium is not as enriched as it is required to generate electricity. That can be the thing. But the statement says uranium enriched to the extent of at least 60% is required. So you need to know whether this statement is also factually correct or not. So it is a very factual question, but let's see if we can eliminate at least some option. Both statement 1 and 2 are correct. Okay. And statement 2 is the correct explanation. So for both the statement, for us to know both are correct or not, we need to know this fact as well. Right. So we can't eliminate that if we don't know it. Both statement 1 and 2 are correct and statement 2 is not the correct explanation for statement 1. Again, we need to know this fact. Statement 1 is correct, statement 2 is incorrect. Again, we need to know this fact. Statement 1 is incorrect. We know this is not the thing. Statement 1 we know is correct, so this can be eliminated, but still we are left with total 3 options. So now what is the actual thing? The actual thing is you do not require 60% enriched uranium. All you need is 3 to 5% of enriched uranium. Okay? That is the enrichment level you require for uranium to generate electricity. So statement 2 is incorrect and statement 1, as we know, is the correct statement. So hence option will be C. Since statement 2 is incorrect, this option says statement 2 is correct. No, that is wrong. This option also says it is correct, so that is also wrong. Statement 2 is incorrect. You require 3 to 5% enriched uranium. India does not even have that much of enriched uranium. Next, consider the following statements. Most of India's external debt is owed by government entities. Statement 1. All of India's external debt is denominated in US dollars. Now, all cannot be denominated in US dollars. This is an extreme statement. And most of India's external debt is not owned by the government. It is mostly owned by the private entities. So both statements are wrong. Again, a factual question. This is with respect to international borrowings and stuff. In the context of India, which of the following factors are contributor or contributors to reducing the risk of a currency crisis? What factors can reduce the risk of currency crisis is what they are asking. Number one, the foreign currency earnings of India's IT sector. Yes, it can reduce the currency crisis. Why? Because the IT sector, when earns foreign revenue, foreign currency, it will reduce the. But what it's saying, it will reduce the risk. Okay, it's not saying balance of payment. It is saying risk. Now, these are two different things. Okay, I think we need to understand this concept over here very clearly. So, balance of payment is what? The trade deficit which is there or surplus which is there. India, when trades with another country, India will sell its product as exports and get, let's say, dollars. India will buy imports and have to pay dollars. Now, in this scenario, if we are exporting less and importing more, then we will be in a trade deficit. So, there would be a balance of payment which will be in deficit. If we do not have dollars to pay that deficit, then that would lead to balance of payment crisis. So, that is a balance of payment crisis. But this question talks about in context of which of the following factors are contributors to reducing the risk. Reduction of risk we are talking about. Reduction of risk meaning the foreign currency can fluctuate. If we are too much involved with the foreign currency, with the foreign world, that will hamper us also. For example, in 2008 crisis, why was India so safe with respect to this crisis? Because India did not directly invest in the subprime loans that were being given by the US banks. India was not directly investing its money in that. That is why we were safe. So, the less and less we are invested directly, the less and less we will have the risk. So, knowing this concept, let us look at the options again. Remittances from Indians abroad, yes, this is going to help. Increasing the government expenditure, no, not necessarily. Foreign currency earnings, this is, we are talking about earnings, not spending. So, since this is earnings, this is going to help. Remittances is also after earnings, the NRIs are sending back into India, this is also going to help. So, 1 and 3 are going to help, 2 is not going to help. How will government spending help as such? Government generation of revenue, earning money would have helped, but government's expenditure will not. Hence, option would be B, 1 and 3. Which of the following is issued by registered foreign portfolio investors? Registered FPIs, registered foreign portfolio investors, to overseas investors who want to be a part of the Indian stock market without themselves registering directly. So, let's say someone is a foreigner who wants to own some stock market, but they don't want to get registered directly. So, they get the access to the stock market through some registered portfolio investors, right? So, these registered portfolio investors can give these people who want to invest in Indian stock market the access to Indian stock market through which of the following instrument is the question. So, certificate deposit, no. Commercial paper, no. Promissory note, no. The correct answer here is participatory note. Participatory note. Participatory note, or it is also known as the P notes. So, this concept you should remember. P notes are the notes. P notes are the notes through which registered foreign portfolio investors, okay, issue to overseas investors who would want to be a part of the Indian stock market without themselves getting registered. Now, why this provision is there? Because each and every individual wanting to register, you need to verify each and every individual. So, that work is given to the foreign portfolio investor. They will do it. And they will have lot of such individuals with them under their portfolio, and they themselves will directly invest in the market. So, when FPIs invest in the market, the overseas individual investor or the company, whomever they are, they also get exposure to the Indian stock market. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now, With reference to India's 5-year plans, which of the following statements are correct? With reference to India's 5-year plans, which of the following statements are correct? Statement 1 says, from the second 5-year plan, there was a determined thrust towards substitution of basic and capital good industries. Yes, our focus was on heavy industries. Industrial focus was there. Now, the fourth 5-year plan adopted the objective of correcting the earlier trend of increased concentration of wealth and economic power, talking about addressing inequality. Yes. In the fifth 5-year plan, for the first time, the financial sector was included as integral part of the plan. No, this happened later on. So here what happened? Here it was talking about the poverty alleviation, removing poverty, garibi hatao. So statement 3 is wrong. Since statement 3 is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, 1 is correct. So 1 and 2 would be the correct answer here. Now, again an interesting concept here. Question says, consider the following statements. Purchasing power parity exchange rates are calculated by comparing the prices of the same basket of goods and services in different countries. Yes, absolutely correct. I'll explain this concept. So the thing is, guys, we know that, let's say presently $1 is trading at 80 rupees. So we think that the value of the rupee has gone down, $1 80 rupees, oh my god. But in reality, if you actually look at the value, $1 would actually be somewhere close to 20 rupees. How is that possible? Because in the market, $1 is trading at 80 rupees. But if you buy an ice cream in India, let's say you get a good ice cream of a particular quality brand in 80 rupees in India. Okay. If you want to buy the similar or the same brand and same quality and same amount of ice cream in USA, you will not get it in $1. You will have to spend $4 to get the same ice cream. What does that mean? That $1 may equal to be 80 rupees in the market. But value wise, the purchasing power wise, $1 is not equal to 80 rupees, $4 is equal to 80 rupees. Since $4 is equal to 80 rupees, so $1 is equal to how much? $1 is equal to 20 rupees. Now why this difference? This is the market rate, but this is the actual purchasing power. How are you able to calculate this? By comparing the price of the similar good, that is ice cream in this case. But you don't do it only with ice cream, you take a number of products and services. So that would be a basket of goods and services, and that is the classical definition of purchasing power parity exchange rates, which are calculated by comparing the prices of the same basket of goods and services of different countries. I hope that's clear. This statement is correct. Second, in terms of PPP dollars, India is the 6th largest economy in the world. No, India is the 3rd largest economy in the world. In PPP terms, India is the 3rd largest economy in the world. So, correct answer is A1 only. Among the following commodities imported by India, which one of the following accounts for the highest imports in terms of value, not the quantity, but in terms of value in the last 5 years? Spices, no. The entire Europe came to India for spices. But of course, there can be a thought process that since they have taken away the spices, so we may have less. But then spices are not like you excavate them, you keep growing them. So even when Europeans went away, still a lot of spices would still be there in India, and spices is not something we import much or import at all. In fact, we export the spices. Fresh fruits, no. Pulses, pulses, yes. Pulses also we import. At times, if there is a need, we may import fresh fruits also if the inflation is high. So time to time we may do that. Pulses are also we are importing. Vegetable oils are also we are importing. But if you look at the value of import, vegetable oil has the highest value of import. Edible oil has the highest value of import. In fact, 70% of the need of India is satisfied by the imports of vegetable oil. Next, With reference to land reforms in independent India, which one of the following statements is correct? The sealing laws were aimed at family holdings and not individual holdings. Wrong. It were aimed at family as well as individual holdings. The major aim of land reform was providing agricultural land to all the landless. Yes, this was the major aim, but still let us see other options as well. It resulted in cultivation of cash crops as a predominant form of cultivation. No, it did not. Land reforms permitted no exemptions to the sealing. It did permit certain exemptions to the ceilings. So the correct option here is the major aim of land reform was providing agricultural land to the landless masses. Among the again see a factual question. So in economic sectors a lot of questions would be factual. Among the following, which one is the largest exporter of rice in the world in the last 5 years? That is India. In fact, in this decade, earlier India was second, but in this decade India has become the first, and it has been the first since a few years now. With reference to National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, that is NIIF, National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, which of the following statements are correct? It is an organ of Niti Aayog. No, it is not an organ of Niti Aayog. It has a corpus of 4 lakh crore. No, it does not. It has a corpus of 40,000 crores. It is a public-private partnership. Public-private partnership, as in the government of India is involved and taking the fundings from the private sectors also. The corpus is of 40,000 crores, not 4 lakh crore. So neither of the statements are correct. Again, a very factual question. Either you know it or you don't know it. Consider the following statements. The standard mark of Bureau of Indian Standards (BIS) is mandatory for automotive tires and tubes. Yes. So BIS marks are mandatory. This is basically the standard quality standard marks that we are talking about, which are necessary for the automotive tires and tubes. It will be there necessary for various other things also, including the tires and tubes as well. Now, egg mark. Egg mark is a quality certification mark issued by the Food and Agriculture Organization. No, that is wrong. What is Food and Agriculture Organization? This is nothing but FAO, and FAO is a specialized United Nations body. So it's not brought out by them. Then who brings this out? This is brought out by the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. What are the advantages of implementing the National Agricultural Market Scheme? National Agriculture Market Scheme, ENAM, Electronic National Agriculture Market Scheme. So what the government has made? The government has made the entire India as one single market. You can see the rate of the produce, whatever you have produced in different markets and different mandis throughout India, and sell it to the best possible option. That's the concept. So let us look at it. It is a pan-India electronic trading portal for agricultural commodities. Yes. It provides the farmers access to nationwide market with prices commensurate with the quality of their product. Yes. So both options are correct over here. With reference to Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, consider the following statements. This question says, statement 1, under the scheme farmers have to pay a uniform premium of 2% for any crop they cultivate in any season of the year? No. There is a differential rate of premium. Why is there a differential rate of premium? It is insurance. In insurance, different crops may have different risk. Kharif crop may have a different risk, Rabi may have a different risk, horticultural crop may have a different risk, and that is why the premiums would be different. So that is why government would be paying some a lot, in fact the majority of the amount of the premium, but some still has to be paid by the farmers, and that is also based on the risk profiling. So when it is kharif crop, the farmers have to pay 3%. For rabi crops it is 2%, and for horticultural crops it is 5%. So kharif 3%, rabi 2% and horticultural 5%. That shows that horticultural crops are the more risky because they are perishable, they are delicate, they can get affect very easily. Then kharif, rain fed, rain requirement, then rabi, the least risky of them all, but still of course there is a risk. So this is wrong. This scheme covers post-harvest losses arising out of cyclones and unseasonal rains. Yes, this scheme includes post-harvest losses as well. So the correct answer is option B. The following is the purpose of Uday, a scheme of the government of India. Now if you know, let's say the full form of Uday, you can get the answer. Okay, full form of Uday is Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. So Discom, that is distribution company. What distribution company? Electricity distribution company. So Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Now if we know the name, let's see what the answer would be. Providing technical and financial assistance to startup entrepreneurs in the field of renewable source of energy? No. Providing electricity to every household in the country by 2018? No. Replacing the coal-based power plants with natural gas, nuclear, solar, wind and tidal power plants over a period of time? No. Providing for financial turnaround and revival of power distribution companies? Yes. Power distribution company, electricity distribution companies, which are Discoms. So this scheme is for Discoms, and this is the only statement which talks about Discoms, hence this is the right option. Providing for financial turnaround and revival of power distribution companies. Next, the fair and remunerative price FRP of sugarcane is approved by whom? Now MSP, that is minimum support price, is there in 23 different crops. In sugarcane, there is a similar concept of MSP, but it is not MSP, but that concept is FRP, that is fair and remunerative price. Okay. Now, MSP is recommended by CACP, that is Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. This actually takes care of MSP, not FRP. Then FRP is taken care by whom? See, Agricultural Market Produce Committee, it regulates the mandis which are there. Okay. So now this option is wrong, this option is wrong. The correct option for approval of FRP is by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. The Cabinet Committee, CCEA, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approves the fair and remunerative price of sugarcane. Now, in India, markets in agricultural products are regulated under what? Markets in agricultural product. Essential Commodities Act? No. Agricultural Produce Market Committee Act enacted by the state? Yes. So it is regulated under the APMC Act, Agriculture Produce Market Committee Act. This act enacted by the individual states regulates the market. Now, next, which of the following brings out the consumer price index for the industrial workers? It is brought out by the Labour Bureau. Again, a very factual question. Reserve Bank of India does not bring in, Department of Economic Affairs does not, Personnel and Training does not. It's the Labour Bureau of India. It brings it for the industrial workers. Okay. Next, what are the significances of a practical approach to sugarcane production known as Sustainable Sugarcane Initiative? Seed cost is very low in this compared to the conventional method of cultivation. Maybe. Let's see further. Drip irrigation can be practiced very effectively. Yes, 2 is correct. So we can eliminate any option which does not have 2. So this is eliminated. There is no application of chemical or inorganic fertilizers at all in this. No. We are talking about sustainable, so that is not zero use of chemical fertilizer. Some use of chemical fertilizer will still be there. Hence, statement 3 will be wrong. Hence, any option which has statement 3 will be eliminated. So this is gone. This is gone. So 4 will also be right. But let us have a look at it. The scope for intercropping is more in this compared to conventional method. Yes, it will be more for intercropping. Why? Also because that's a part of sustainable development. You do intercropping. Intercropping as in you have 2 different crops. So one of the crop is taking some different nutrients, the other crop taking some different nutrients. So the reduction in one particular type of nutrient is not exorbitant or drastic, right? If only similar crops are grown, the same nutrients will be kept on taking by the soil. But if you do intercropping, different nutrients would be taken away. So the reduction in one particular nutrient would be lesser, and that's a more sustainable way of agriculture. So 1, 2 and 4. Hence the correct option is option B. Now, next, in the context of the affairs of which of the following is the phrase special safeguard mechanism is mentioned in the news frequently? That is World Trade Organization. Now what is special safeguard mechanism? Special safeguard mechanism means if there is a huge dumping of agricultural produce, right? So a country where this dumping is being experienced, that country can impose an import duty on this agricultural produce in order to save their agricultural sector. Clear? So that is the special safeguard mechanism in terms of the agricultural sector. I hope this is clear. Now, next, steel slag can be the material for which of the following? Steel slag, what is steel slag? See, from iron ore we get steel. So there is a process. It is done through a blast furnace at different temperatures and all. Steel, iron ore is there, and at the bottom here a lot of slag is left. So when steel is extracted from iron ore, the remaining or the byproduct is the slag. Slag is a byproduct in the extraction of steel from iron ore in the blast furnace. Okay, and now this slag can actually be used as a construction of base road, improvement of agricultural soil, as well as production of steel. Production of steel definitely, construction of base road definitely. Why improvement of agricultural soil? Because it helps in reducing the acidity of the soil. Since this is basic, it helps in reducing the acidity of the soil, and hence this slag is helping in agriculture as well. So correct option is all of the above. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now one thing very quickly we need to see is with respect to the land reform, one question was there, right? So you need to know few points under land reform, because I think that question focused on one particular point alone, not the others. So what we can do is, yes, this one. We can do is look at the other points also of land reforms. So what all did land reform consist of? Let's quickly have a look. The very first thing about land reform, let me write here. The very first thing about land reform was abolition of zamindari, mehalwari, and Ryotwari. That is one thing. Second was the tenancy reform. Under tenancy reform, it talked about regulation of rent. It should not be too much. Also, Fixed tenure, for fixed tenure the tenant should be allowed to stay, and also ownership to tenant, in which case ownership to tenant if they have been tenant for 12 consecutive years. So what will happen? The landlords will not let that happen. After 10 years they will kick them out. So there is no political win only, but this was the part of the tenancy reform. And the third one was the redistribution of land. To the landless masses. Now how this was done? This was done through the Land Ceiling Act. Now was this successful? No. This was successful up to 2%. This tenancy reform was successful up to 4%. So the total success rate of the entire land reform was only 6%. Okay, so this was about the land reforms, and these were the questions related to your economic sector. As you can see, very factual questions. You have to remember certain things as well to answer questions related to this sector, and as you know, this has been having a share of almost 1/3 number of questions in the examination. All right, so in our revision series for economics, we have now reached the last section of economy, that is the socio-economic sectors. Okay, now from socio-economic sectors, if you would see in the last 13 years, because we have analyzed papers of over 10 years, that is of around last 13 years we have done for other sections also, including for this. So in the last 13 years, 30 plus questions has been asked on socio-economic sectors. So that's close to 3 questions on an average every year that is being asked. Sometimes it can be 2, sometimes it can be 4 also. And the topics under this are quite simple as in not much of an understanding is required, but remembering them is required. There can be certain nuances which you need to take care of. Right, we'll see that as we move ahead. So in this socio-economic sectors, the major topics, the trending or the important topics would be your poverty, inequality, unemployment and inclusive growth. Now there are certain concepts with respect to poverty. As I said, that there can be certain nuances which may confuse you. For example, absolute poverty and relative poverty. What's the difference? With respect to unemployment, what is actually unemployment? Now it seems to be very simple, but when I talk about different kinds of unemployment, then you need to think which kind of unemployment there is. Also, let's say you are, of course you are preparing for UPSC Civil Services examination, and let's say you are preparing without working, right? Without doing any work, you're not doing any job, you're simply preparing for UPSC. So are you unemployed or are you employed? You are not employed, of course, because you're not working, but will you be considered as an unemployed person with respect to the statistics that the government comes out with respect to the unemployment rate? We'll see all that when we'll be going through these concepts. And then finally there is inclusive growth also. Inequality, there are 2 important things we will see. One is the Gini coefficient and the other is the Lorentz curve. We will see this also. In fact, we'll also see how from the Lorentz curve the Gini coefficient actually gets calculated. Okay, so these are the major topics of socio-economic sectors. We will see them, and after that we will start solving the questions that have been asked in the last 13 years. Now questions not necessarily, of course there will be certain conceptual questions, but a lot of questions will also be based on facts which again you have to remember. So let's get started with the socio-economic sectors. So the very first thing that we will be looking at is poverty. Now in poverty, we will be looking at absolute as well as relative. So first things first, let us understand what is poverty. What is poverty? So if you talk about poverty, poverty is the inability, financial inability to meet the basic needs of a person, an individual, or a particular section of the society. So this is financial inability. Financial inability to meet the basic needs. Right? Financial inability to meet the basic needs. Now, what are absolute and relative poverty? See, whatever we have defined as poverty is nothing but absolute poverty. Absolute poverty in absolute terms. That boss, I do not have money to meet my basic needs of food, clothing and shelter. Now, also remember, these basic needs can differ from country to country. For example, in a very least developed country, probably food, clothing, shelter is the only thing. But as the country progresses, from least developing it becomes developed and wants to be, from least developing it becomes a developing country, then it wants to become a developed country, or if it is already developed country and if the food, clothing, shelter needs are met, they might try to include more things in the basic needs itself. So this definition can very well change, not a problem, but whatever the basic needs definition is there, that should be met. If that is not being met by an individual or a particular section of the society, then absolute poverty is said to be existing in those individuals or the society. Right? So this definition of poverty itself is nothing but absolute poverty. All you have to understand is the relative poverty. So what is relative poverty will be? Relative poverty will be, there, see, based on this there will be poor people. Based on absolute poverty, we will come across, let's say, the poverty rate of India presently as per World Bank is 10%, as per Niti Aayog is 11%. So basically we have 11% poor people or people below poverty line. Right? So we have 11% people below poverty line. Who are these people? These are the people who do not have financial ability to satisfy their basic needs. Now, the thing is, if I ask that there is a country X and there is a country Y, there are 10% poor people in this country and 10% poor people in this country. Now, if I ask you which country is relatively poor, and let me tell you that the population is same. So, the population here is, let's say, 10 crore. The population here also is, let's say, 10 crore. So now I ask you, out of 10 crore, 10% people are poor, that means 1 crore people are poor. Here also 10% people are poor, that means 1 crore people are poor. Now if I ask you to please tell me which country is relatively poor, what will be your answer? Will you say, sir, both the countries are equally poor? That's possible. Based on absolute poverty, both countries are equally poor. But if the question says, based on relative poverty, which country is more poor? And if you say both are equally poor, that's wrong, because with this data you cannot determine. So based on relative poverty, you actually cannot determine which country is more poor. I'll tell you why. Because here also 10% of people are not able to meet the basic needs. Here also 10% of people are not able to meet the basic needs. How is poverty line calculated? The poverty line as per World Bank is $1.9 per day. So if you are not earning $1.9 per day, you are poor. You are a part of absolute poverty. Okay. So here 10% of people are not able to earn $1.9 per day. Here also 10% people are not able to earn $1.9 per day. But what can happen? It can so happen that majority or all of these 10% of people lie around $1.75 to $1.9 per day. And here it can so happen that these 10% people, majority of them or all of them, lie somewhere between $0.4 to $0.6 per day. Now if I give you this statistics, so even though the absolute poverty of these countries are same, right? but the relative poverty is different because majority or all of the people are lying here very close to the poverty line. So just a small push can get a lot of them out of poverty, and here a majority or almost all of them are lying so below the poverty level. So what is happening? You are now comparing how poor are the poor. Here you were asking the question, how many are poor? So absolute poverty answers the question, how many are poor? Okay, relative poverty answers the question, how poor are your poor? How poor are your or the poor people? How poor are the poor? It answers the question, how many are poor? Relative poverty answers the question, how poor are your poor? Because here both the countries have poor people, but this country has the poor people who are more poor than the poor people of this country. So Y country have poor people who are more poor than the poor people of X country. Okay, so understood this logic? So again, what will then be relative poverty? Relative poverty will be nothing but the comparison, comparing the two different poor people. So it will be nothing but the standard of living of one particular individual or section of society compared with the standard of living of another individual or the section of society respectively. It is a comparison between the two poor. Now, you can also say, sir, can I compare Ambani and Adani and then say who is relatively more poor? But then that would be more ideal to do who is more rich, not who is more poor, because poverty and all is calculated to get people out of the poverty line. Okay, so even you can do that and say, because if one is richer than the other is actually technically speaking poorer. But you don't compare rich people, you compare people generally below the poverty line to see how poor are the poor comparatively. So that is your relative poverty. Now, measures to estimate poverty. How do you measure poverty? Of course, as I gave here, 11% of people are poor in India, that is they are below the poverty line. And I have told $1.9 per day is the poverty line given by the World Bank. So what do? You come up with the amount that is needed per day or per month or per year in a particular country, region, state, right? If the person is earning that minimum amount, you can say that they are not poor. If they earn that much of amount or slight or more than that, they are not poor. Everyone else who earns less than that particular amount can be considered as poor. So one such measure to calculate the poverty will be what? One such measure would be the poverty line. So if we talk about measures to estimate poverty, there is poverty line to do that. Okay, so you have the poverty line to do that. Now how is poverty line calculated? Again remember, poverty is the inability to meet the basic needs. So poverty line will be calculated by deciding calculating how much money is required per day to meet the basic needs. So based on that, whatever the money per day is required becomes your poverty line. Anyone below it is below poverty line, anyone above it is above poverty line. So anyone below it who is below poverty line would be considered as poor. So poverty line is the way to measure the poverty. Now there is a concept of multi-dimensional poverty. Let me explain that. So earlier what used to happen is, in India, if we talk about how was poverty line set, just based on the requirement of the calories of a person. As in, we calculated poverty based on calories, meaning in rural area a person needs 2400 calories to survive, to stay alive. In urban areas the person needed 2100 calories to survive. Now in rural areas, how much money is needed to buy a food which can give you 2400 calories? That is calculated in terms of rupees. and how much money is needed to get a food worth of 2100 calories in urban area, that is calculated in rupees, right? And whatever the outcome gives you the poverty line of rural area and the poverty line of the urban area. That is how the poverty line was calculated. So that is a very unidimensional method of calculating the poverty line, unidimensional method. Okay, that's a very unidimensional method of calculating the poverty line, because you are only taking into account calories. You are saying food, clothing and shelter. Here neither shelter is there, neither clothing is there. So why did India do this? We did this because the situation was such, when we got independence, the situation was such in India that we wanted to at least ensure that people are not dying, they are having enough to eat. And from there we kept on improving on it. We cannot have higher standards, we want to have low level of standards so that we can first reach out to the poorest of the poor, because the resources are limited. Okay, so that's why we started with this, but now we have reached multidimensional poverty. So what is multidimensional poverty? Multidimensional poverty not only takes this into account, it adds other things. What does it add? It adds other expenses also. Other expenses would include the expenses on education, the expenses on health, the expenses on consumer durable, etc. And so someone may not be poor based on the poverty line, because they are able to get this much of calorie in rural area and this much of calorie in urban areas, but their other expenses may be low. Let's say expenses on education and health are low, hence they may not be poor based on the poverty line, but they can still be poor in the multidimensional poverty index. Alright, so multidimensional poverty index takes into account not just the calories but expenditure on education, health, consumer durable products as well. Okay, so that's the concept of multidimensional poverty. Now let's move on to inequality. Very important, especially a lot of understanding would be required in the Gini coefficient and the Lorentz curve. We'll understand that as well. So what is inequality? Inequality in very simple terms is the gap. Okay, it is the gap between, let's say, two individuals, two countries, two sections of the society. So gap in, it is nothing but gap in. Now here remember, when you are comparing relative poverty, it was between two different poors. Inequality need not necessarily be between two different poor people, but rather between poor and rich. So inequality is nothing but the gap in income of rich and poor. It is the gap in what? Gap in income. Between whom? Between the rich and the poor. It is the gap in income between the rich and the poor. Now, how is this calculated? Inequality of a country. It is calculated based on the Gini coefficient. Now, Gini coefficient itself is calculated based on the Lorentz curve. So, let's first understand what is Lorentz curve. So here you have cumulative income, okay, and here you have cumulative population. Hence Lorentz curve is what? Lorentz curve is nothing but a graph between cumulative income and cumulative population. Now, if there would have been perfect equality, that means one person, let's say, earning 100 rupees. So if it becomes two people, then it becomes 200 rupees. If it becomes 3 people, it becomes 300 rupees. So are you seeing, as and when I am adding a one person, 100 rupees of income is getting added. So what will happen? Cumulative number here is 100, cumulative income is 100, cumulative population 2, cumulative income is 100, cumulative population 3, cumulative income is 300. So it is linearly increasing. So this would be the line of perfect equality. Now how will this line of perfect equality be? Will it be like this? Will it be like this? Now you can check for yourself. If this is the line, in this what is happening? Without any increase in population, the income is increasing suddenly. So this will not be the line. Here with the population is increasing, but the income is not increasing only. So this will also not be the line. So what will be the line? With slight increase in slight increase in income, or slight increase in population rather, income would slightly increase. With an increase in population, income increases. Increase in population, income increases, right? So this would be actually a straight line at, let me just change this, it should have a proper angle. So it would be a straight line, okay, at 45 degrees. This would be your, let's say, line of perfect equality. This is your line of perfect equality, because if population increases by 1, your income increases by 100. So what is the point? The point is something here, this. Then population increases by another 1, your income increases by another 1. So the point is here, population increases by 1, income increases by another 100. So population keeps on increasing, income keeps on increasing, population keeps on increasing, income keeps on increasing, and hence it's a line at 45 degrees. Okay, but is that the case in the countries? No. Generally the curve would be something like this. Okay, it would be something like this. So we have this line going here, and we have this line something like this. Okay, this would be, let's say, a line. So in this what is happening? Initially population kept on increasing, the income increased very less. So these are the poor people over here. Later on, let's say from this point onwards, population did not increase much. Only this much increase in population led to this much increase in the income. So these are the rich people over here. Poor people over here, middle income people, and rich people over here. Suddenly there is an exponential increase in the income. Okay, so this, guys, is your Lorentz curve. This is the curve of perfect equality. Now how is Gini coefficient calculated? Gini coefficient, to calculate Gini coefficient, what is done is, if I extend this, okay, let me just draw it again. You have understood the line of perfect equality, you have understood the Lorentz curve. Now let's see how the Gini coefficient can be calculated. Okay, we'll have to use the same graph, Lorentz curve, only to calculate the Gini coefficient. Okay, so okay, so this is the perfect equality line. This was your Lorentz curve. Okay, this would be a Lorentz curve, and let me close this square. So this is a square. Okay, this is a square in which you have the perfect equality line and you have the Lorentz curve. Now in this square, what is happening is, this is the line of perfect equality. This is the Lorentz curve, right? Now this is the area between the Lorentz curve and the line of perfect equality, right? And this complete is a square. So this, since this line was at 45 degrees, what will happen? This is half the triangle, this is the remaining half of the triangle. So Gini coefficient is equal to the ratio of, Gini coefficient is equal to the ratio of the area between the line of perfect equality and the Lorentz curve. So it equals to the ratio of area between line of perfect equality and Lorentz curve upon the area of the triangle where the Lorentz curve lies. So the Lorentz curve lies in this particular triangle. It lies in this particular triangle. So we'll take the entire area of this particular triangle. So it will be area of the triangle in which Lorentz curve lies. So if I name this A, B and C, so it will be the area of triangle ABC. So what is Gini coefficient? It is area between the line of perfect equality and Lorentz curve. That means this area divided by area of triangle in which the Lorentz curve lies. Now from this we will also understand another concept, that is the concept of perfect equality and perfect inequality. When there is perfect equality, this Lorentz curve will not be like this, it will overlap this, right? Since it will overlap this, what will be the area between the line of perfect equality and Lorentz curve? It will be 0 because they are overlapping. So Gini coefficient would be 0 upon whatever, 0 upon anything is 0. So Gini coefficient is equals to 0 in case of perfect equality. And in case of perfect inequality, what will happen, guys? In case of perfect inequality, you keep on increasing the population, there will be no increase in the income. But the last individual will have all the income. So when you come to the last individual, the income suddenly rises to the highest. So what is happening? This curve which was like this has now got converted into this triangular shape, right? So what will be the area between the line of perfect equality and the Lorentz curve? It will be same as the area of triangle ABC. So it will be same as in, when this and this are same, what is the ratio? Ratio is 1. That means Gini coefficient equals 1 when there is perfect inequality. I hope this is absolutely clear. I hope the Lorentz curve is clear, the Gini coefficient is clear, how to calculate it is clear, and when it is 1, when it is perfect equality, and when is it 0, when there is perfect equality, and when is it 1, when there is perfect inequality. Clear? Now, let's move on to the concept of unemployment. So, I was in the beginning I said something that let's say you are preparing for UPSC and not doing any other work, right, just preparing. Now I also said that the government comes up with the unemployment rate, that the unemployment rate has increased, it has decreased, it is 6 point this, 6.5, whatever. So will you be counted in that unemployment rate? No. Why? Because what is the meaning of unemployment, or who is unemployed? A person who is able to work and, it's not or, it's and willing to work. But does not find work. So that person would be called as an unemployed person. And this person would be included in the unemployment statistics. A person who is able to work plus willing to work. These two criteria needs to be met, that the person should be able to work plus willing to work, and still if they are not getting a job, then they are unemployed. In your case, when you are not working but just preparing for UPSC, that means what? You may be able to work. Yes, you may have the skills, education, health, but you are not willing to work because you are willing to prepare for UPSC, so you will not be considered under the unemployment statistics. However, that your unemployment would be a specific kind of unemployment that is called as voluntary unemployment. You guys are voluntarily unemployed. You are unemployed at your own will. Okay. That means when we talk about unemployment and the statistics that the government comes up with, those are involuntary unemployment. People are not wanting to be unemployed, but still they are unemployed. So that's the statistics we discuss and need to address. Whereas this is voluntary unemployment, wherein you are able to work, but you are not willing to work because you are preparing for higher studies or competitive examination, etc., etc. So the definition of unemployment is a person who is able to work and willing to work but does not get work is unemployed. Whereas a person who is able to work but not willing, and since they are not willing, that's why they are not working, so that would be voluntary unemployment. Now what can be the other types of unemployment? The other types of unemployment can be seasonal unemployment. When someone gets seasonal unemployment, not employment, but you can say employment also, because in some seasons you are employed and in some other seasons you are not employed. So that is seasonal unemployment majorly happens in the agricultural season. Okay. The sowing season is there, harvesting season is there, the agricultural laborers would get the job. But after sowing for 6-7 months, the plant is growing on its own. The agricultural laborers do not have much work in that season, in that period. So they would be every year for that particular season, they would be seasonally unemployed. So that would be seasonal unemployment. Then there is frictional unemployment. What is frictional unemployment? See, what happens is, when you quit a job, okay, let's say I quit a job in my previous organization on some date, and I am joining a job in the other organization, let's say my present organization, after let's say 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month. So that let's say after 1 month, so that 1 month gap which is there, that gap would, in that gap I am not working. So that gap in which I am not working, I am unemployed. That unemployment is my frictional unemployment. Unemployment due to job switch. Okay. Unemployment due to job switch is your frictional unemployment. I hope that is absolutely clear. Okay, we'll then also look at, it can also happen due to, for example, when you're switching, you yourself resign, you switch the job, there was a gap, frictional unemployment. It can also happen that you were laid off, you were fired, you were removed from the job, and because you were removed, now you are searching for another job, and after some time you get it. So again, for small period of time you were not employed, that again is frictional unemployment. It is sort of temporary in nature, short period. So due to job switching, layoff, lockdown, lockout, if there is a strike, because of all that, that would be frictional unemployment. Okay, then there is technological unemployment. Let's say whenever a new technology comes, Now instead of using the old technology or no use of technology, now the company starts using a new technology and you do not know anything about that technology, you do not have the skills, hence you are unemployed, right? Because of the introduction of a technology, if you got unemployed, then that is technological unemployment. Then there is casual unemployment. Now casual unemployment generally happens in the daily wage laborers. What is casual unemployment? See, the concept of daily wage laborers, every day they have to find a job, every day they have to get a job. So how does it happen is, these daily wage laborers will be standing in front of certain bus stops, you might have seen at times, and there would be contractors who would visit those bus stops or those designated places to hire these people for one particular day. So 100 200 people would be standing, you will hire as much as you want for that particular day. So every day you are getting hired. But at times it can so happen that on some days you are not hired. For example, I want to hire daily wage laborer to do a job of 10 days of, let's say, some construction. Okay. Now, but I am not hiring them for entire 10 days. Every day I am hiring them. I am giving them daily wages. So when you are doing the construction work, let's say it's for 1 month. So there would be certain materials that is required. It can so happen that due to some issue, I did not get the materials today. I hired them one day, they did some work, the next day material has not come. So next day I will not hire them. Why? Because I do not have the raw material to give them to work on. So they may not get employment on that particular day. So when daily wage laborers, because of such casual reason of unavailability of raw material, do not get the employment for that particular day, they are said to be undergoing casual unemployment, right? Then there is a very interesting term, disguised unemployment. In disguised unemployment, what happens is, let's say there is a need of five people for a job, but actually you have put 10 people on that job, right? 5 people could have done the job in one day, but you have hired 10 people to do the same job in one day. So what has happened? 5 people are under disguised employment, disguised unemployment. That means even if you would have removed 5 people from this, the job would have still be completed on the in the same time. Meaning removal of 5 people from this job is not affecting the productivity adversely. If that is the case, when you can remove any number of people without affecting the productivity, then those people were supposed to be in disguised unemployment. In the same manner, if I can keep on adding more and more people and still the work still takes one day and not less than that, meaning even if you can keep on adding people and the productivity does not increase, that means those added people are under disguised unemployment. So remember 2 things. If you can remove certain people without adversely affecting the productivity, these people who are removed were under disguised unemployment. And if you can keep adding the people without enhancing the productivity, then the people you are adding are also under disguised unemployment. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now, coming on to the last concept over here, that is inclusive growth. So what is inclusive growth? OECD, that is Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, gives a definition of inclusive growth, saying that it is an economic growth that creates employment opportunities for all segments and distributes the dividends fairly. It is an economic growth. Inclusive growth is an economic growth which creates employment opportunity for all. Employment opportunities for all and distributes the dividends. They have mentioned dividends is nothing but profits, the dividends fairly, distributes the profits, or you may call it as dividends fairly. They are not saying equally, they are saying fairly, justly, in a just manner. Justice should be done in a just manner. That is your inequality. Now, inclusive growth. Now, what are the challenges in achieving inclusive growth? The challenges in achieving inclusive growth are what? It's high population, poverty, unemployment. Now, very interesting thing is, guys, when you look at all the topics that we have done, poverty, unemployment, right, inequality, and inclusive growth. So, poverty, unemployment, population, poverty, unemployment, and inequality are the challenges in front of inclusive growth. In the same manner, in front of poverty, what are the challenges? Population, unemployment, inequality. In front of unemployment, what are the challenges? Again, population, right? Inequality, poverty. These are related concepts. You cannot separate them from each other. So they would be the reason for each other. Poverty, unemployment, and inequality would be the reasons for each other, and population would be there in everything. Whether it's poverty, unemployment, inequality, inclusive growth, population would be one of the reasons anyhow. So remember this. Alright, so now let's move on to the questions that have been asked from this particular section. That is the section of socio-economic sectors. Okay, some questions would be related to the concepts we have already done. Whenever any concept keeps coming in the question, we will be understanding that as well. So the very first question here is, which one of the following best describes small farmer, large field? Small farmers, large field. Now, how can that be possible? If there is this field and divided among so many farmers, right, 20-30 farmers, what they can do is, they can club their field. They can club their field and all the farmers together can grow on this complete field. So what is happening? Small farmers have converted their small lands into large land. Hence, small farmer, large field. That is the concept. Let's look at the options. Option A, resettlement of large number of people uprooted from their countries due to war by giving them a large cultivable land which they cultivate collectively and share the produce. Now, this is an outlier. This answer, this statement can be easily eliminated. You know, just imagine, guys, people in large numbers uprooted from their country due to war. People are not even, the countries are not even allowing these kind of people inside their boundary, and we are here talking about giving them large cultivable land. So the question itself is trying to tell you to remove this option by saying that large number of people uprooted from their country, so coming from another country due to war, by giving them large cultivable land. People are not able to give the land to their own citizens in their own country, so, and people are not accepting the people from other countries. So what are we even talking about? So these are the hints UPSC itself is giving to eliminate this option. This option is eliminated. Then many marginal farmers in an area organize themselves into groups and synchronize and harmonize selected agricultural operation. Possible, right? Let's look at the other one. Many marginal farmers in an area together make a contract with a corporate. No, this is contract farming. This is corporate farming. No, this is not the option. Corporate body and surrender their land to the corporate body of a fixed term for which the corporate body makes a payment of agreed amount to the farmers. This is not the concept of small farmers, large farms. This is the concept of corporate, and in fact also the concept of contract farming. So this is a completely different concept altogether. This is also wrong. Now this A company extends loans, technical knowledge and material inputs to a number of small farmers in an area so that they produce the agricultural commodity required by the company for its manufacturing process and commercial production. Again, it's like contract farming only. So this is also wrong. So the correct option would be this. Many marginal farmers in an area, they organize themselves into groups and synchronize and harmonize selected agricultural operations. Meaning what? Okay, you want to sow at that particular time. Okay, what crops are we growing? Okay, we are growing this crop, so this time we'll sow. So what we will do is, we all together rent a tractor for 1 week, and in 1 week we will do sowing, extraction and this and that of all the fields. So that is how you synchronize to efficiently use the resources. If you would have done alone, you wouldn't have the money to rent it out, because even for 1 day you cannot rent it out. Now in 7 days, if you can plow the field of 30 farmers, that is very efficient, so on and so forth. Next, consider the following statements. The self-help group SHG programs was originally initiated by the State Bank of India by providing microcredit to the financially deprived. Now, the concept is correct, but this is a factual question. You need to know that SBI did not start it. It was NABARD that started it. So it is a factual thing. Please remember it. So statement 1 is wrong. Now this is the last year's question. Last year the options have come like this. How many of the above statements are correct? Not which of the above statements, but how many. So you need to know everything completely to get the answer. So only one. See, all 3 cannot be correct because statement 1 is wrong. So this option is gone. Now, in SHG, all members of a group take responsibility for a loan that an individual member takes. Yes. Right. What is a special self-help group? 20 people, for example, coming together, adding some money, let's say 1,000 rupees, it becomes 20,000 rupees. This 20,000 rupees is, let's say, given as loan of 10,000 rupees to 2 different people to start some work. And then they have to return that amount with certain additional interest, very soft loan, very less amount of interest to the other people. So in this way, out of the 20 people, 2 people have now set business and income. Now in the next round, some other people will start their businesses from this money. And it's a very successful thing which is happening. Third, the regional rural bank and scheduled commercial bank support SHGs. Yes, absolutely right. So only 2 statements are right is the correct option. In the context of any country, which one of the following would be considered as a part of social capital? So social capital is what? See, first let's understand what is human capital. Human capital let's understand this. See, when people are born, they are part of the population. Okay. Now, in this population, when you add education, as in when you provide them with education, plus you add skills, plus you provide them with good health, they are of good health. So, a population which is educated, skilled and healthy is nothing but human capital. So, a population can be converted into human capital by provision of education, skill development and proper health. That is your human capital. Now, each individual can be a human capital. Now, what relation these human capital have among themselves is the social capital. So, social capital is nothing but the relation among human capital. So, are the relations harmonious, conflicting, antagonistic, supportive or not? The more supportive, the more harmonious networking is there, the better the social capital is. So, let's look at the options. The proportion of literates in the population, no. Stock of its buildings, other infrastructure, no, because this is a tangible thing. Whereas human capital and social capital are intangible. What is tangible and intangible? Tangible means something that you can see, touch and feel because they are that is physically present. Intangible thing is something which does not physically exist. You cannot see, touch and feel that. That is intangible. Human capital and social capital are intangible things. So this is also wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. Size of the population in the working age group? No, this is the working age population definition. The level of mutual trust and harmony in the society? Absolutely yes. Okay. Moving on. In a given year, in India, official poverty lines are higher in some states than in other because. So, official poverty line are higher in some states than other states. Now, we are talking about the same country. So, currency exchange rate will not matter here. Purchasing power parity will not matter here. What can matter here is the prices of the commodities in different states. That can matter. So, let us see. Poverty rates vary from state to state? No. Poverty rates will not vary from state to state because, see, official poverty lines are higher. When official poverty lines are higher in some states than other, that would define what kind of poverty rates come out of it. Because after poverty lines are defined, only then you can find out poverty rates. Poverty rates cannot come before defining the poverty lines. So the sequence here, chronology itself is wrong. So this is wrong. Price levels vary from state to state? Yes. Since price level varies from state to state, you need to have different poverty lines for different state. If certain state is very cheap to live in, it costs very less to live in, right? The poverty line would be lower. If some states or some region is very costly, the poverty line would be higher. So poverty line would be different based on the price levels which vary from state to state. Will it depend on the gross state product? No. Quality of public distribution? No. Quality of public distribution can change the rates, price levels, and that is the reason why the poverty lines would differ. Now, factual question. Consider the following statements. Nationwide soil health card scheme aims at what? Expanding the cultivable area under irrigation? No. What is the concept of soil health card? See guys, what was happening in India is, there was indiscriminate use of fertilizers. So agriculture was happening, farmers were indiscriminately using the fertilizer. They did not know in what ratio to use. Whatever was given higher subsidy for, they started using that more, and the ratio was very much imbalanced in favor of nitrogen fertilizers. The farmers require NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium in certain ratio. Different ratio for different soils. Farmer did not know what ratio should be, and these ratio were too skewed. So the government came up with the soil health card. You can get your soil tested and find out what constituents, what percentage of NPK is present, hence what percentage and ratio of NPK you need to put in the soil. Right, based on that, if you put, your yield will be amazing and your soil will not get hampered. That is the concept. So is it helping in increasing the irrigation area? Absolutely not. Enabling the banks to assess the quantum of loans to be granted to the farmers on the basis of soil quality? No. It is giving the farmer the knowledge of how much fertilizers you need to put and in what ratio. So 1 is wrong and 2 is wrong. So this is gone, this is gone, this is gone. The only option would be 3, but let us see the option. Checking the overuse of fertilizers in the farmlands? Yes, absolutely correct. So the correct answer is B, that is 3 only. Moving on. Recognition of prior learning scheme. Recognition of prior learning scheme is sometimes mentioned in the news with what? With reference to what? See, what is the recognition of prior learning scheme? The government of India started the skill development mission. Now, when you are starting the skill development mission, you do not mindlessly, you can bring everyone in, give them skill, and then they can get some job. But when you interact with them, when they register, you also ask that, boss, do you have some other skill already? So they may already have certain skills traditionally available to them. And the government started recognizing it. If you already have certain traditionally available skills, let us merge you with certain sectors which require that skill. or let us develop that skill even more instead of starting with a completely new skill. So that's a very good initiative. So that is acknowledging the already traditionally present skill in an individual. So let's see the option. Recognition of prior learning scheme is sometimes mentioned in the news with reference to certifying the skills acquired by construction workers through traditional channels. Enrolling the person in universities for distant learning programs, no. Reserving some skilled jobs to rural and urban poor in some public sector, no. Certifying the skills acquired by trainees under the National Skill Development Program, no. That to you only providing. So what would be the correct answer? Certifying skills acquired by construction workers through traditional channels. Now here they have given an example of construction workers. It can be by someone else in some other field also. Okay. It basically is acknowledging and certifying that you already have certain skills present traditionally in you. Now, Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, this was there to help small entrepreneurs. It consisted of 3 types of loans under Mudra Yojana that was given. Shishu, Kishore and Tarun were the different names. Different amounts of loans were given under Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana is Shishu loans, Kishore loans and Tarun loans. Okay, so it's the loan that is being given for encouraging the small entrepreneurs. Okay, let's see the options. Bringing the small entrepreneurs into the formal financial system, yes. But let's see other options also. Providing loans to farmers, no, nothing to do with farmers. Providing pensions, nothing to do with pensions. Funding voluntary organization involved in promotion of skill development, nothing to do with NGO or skill development. It is for bringing the small entrepreneurs into the formal financial system. Or else the small entrepreneurs will go and take loans from the informal sector at high exorbitant rates. So that is not the right way. Hence to bring them under the formal financial system. Now this guys is a very interesting question. I would give you some insight with respect to the mindset of the paper setter for prelims with the help of this question. Now, what is the question? The question says, Swayam, an initiative of the government of India aims at. Okay. Now what's the, there is a trap that the paper setter has set for you. What is that trap? The name of the scheme is Swayam. Now Swayam is a Hindi word. If you translate it in English, what is the meaning of Swayam? It means doing things by oneself. You know, doing your own things, doing things on your own, right? Self-help, right? Basically self-help, right? Now look at the first option. First option is promoting self-help group. Now this actually translates to Swayam in Hindi. So what will happen? You will be attracted to mark this answer. And also please remember, this is the very first option they have given. This is not the right answer, let me tell you. Right answer is actually the last one. It's a very factual question. What is Swayam? Swayam is basically a free web portal that the government has come up with. You can go log on to that portal and watch lectures, knowledgeable lectures for free over there. So basically you can study on your own. Okay, so it's a web portal. It's providing affordable and quality education to citizens for free. That is what Swayam is. So it's a very factual question. Either you know it or you don't know it. But UPSC tries to attract you to one of the options and they give that option as the very first option to attract you even more. It's like, you know, 50% sale, 60% sale, big boards of sale, free to attract you towards that. That is exactly what this is. Okay, so promoting self-help groups in rural areas, no. Providing financial and technical assistance to young startup entrepreneurs, no. Promoting the education and health of adolescent girls, no. This would have been the most attractive. Someone would have not followed the proper principles. Like there needs to be certain principles. You solve only those questions either which you know it or in which you are left with two options. Now here on by the sake of this translation is present, if you solve it, that can be an issue. Now there is another problem. Another problem is there would be certain questions which you can answer based on the wording. For example, Garima Yojana. So Garima Yojana, Garima means prestige. Now this is 2016 question. There was another 2016 question which was asking about the Garima scheme. Now Garima means prestige, and two options relate in that question was about a scheme for sex workers and a scheme for manual scavengers. Now prestige can be associated with both these two options, sex workers as well as manual scavengers. So you can eliminate the other two options and keep these two as your remaining options. And finally you can get the right answer, that is Garima Yojana or Garima scheme. That is, it is for manual scavengers. Why? Because have you ever heard about any scheme for sex workers in India? No. And that too, this was a national level scheme. So the best probable answer would be manual scavengers. And you can derive this answer. Now you would say that, sir, here you are taking the definition of the word and marking the answer, and here you are saying, let's not take the definition of the word. Why? That is because, guys, there is a huge difference. The difference is, this is a word, they are using it as a word, but this they are using it as an acronym, meaning as a short form. SWAYAM in capital. So this is an acronym. So when there is an acronym, be very careful in directly translating that acronym to its meaning. Avoid it. Here this is not an acronym, so more probably you can do that translation meaning and eradicate or eliminate the options. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now, disguised unemployment, we understood disguised unemployment. The direct question is there. Disguised unemployment generally means a large number of people remain unemployed. No. Alternative employment is not available. No. Marginal productivity of labor is 0. Yes. Last option is productivity of worker is low. No. Productivity of worker can be low. But it should be the marginal productivity of the labor should be 0. Meaning, if you add any one additional worker, the productivity does not increase. If you remove any worker, the productivity does not reduce. So marginal productivity is 0 either way. Okay, that's the correct answer. Now this multi-dimensional poverty index developed by Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative with UNDP support covers which of the following? Multi-dimensional poverty index. Deprivation of education, health, assets, services at household level. Yes, I told you, health, consumer durables, assets and all, right? Purchasing power parity at the national level. Again, remember, purchasing power parity will not come at the national level, it will come at international level. That's where currency exchange rate and purchasing power parity comes. In entire India, it's same rupee that is being used. So purchasing power parity will not come into account. So option statement 2 would be wrong. Hence, this would be out of the picture. Extent of the budget deficit and GDP growth rate at national level. No. Again, this is also not related to the multidimensional poverty. So 3 is also wrong. So the correct option is 1 only. Okay. Among the following, who are eligible to benefit from the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, that is Jayanagara? Adult members of only the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes? No. Of course not. Adult members of below poverty line households? Only below poverty line households they are saying. Adult members of households of all backward communities? Again, it's not caste based or community based or poverty line based. Adult members of any rural household? Yes. Adult members of any rural household, whether they are below poverty line or above poverty line, if they are not getting job, they can get employment under Manrega. So D is the correct option. Inclusive growth as enunciated in the 11th 5-year plan does not include which one of the following? So we know what is inclusive growth, so we can know what should be included, so we can easily identify what need not be included. Reduction of poverty will be there, right? Extension of employment opportunities, yes, employment opportunities should also be there. Strengthening of capital market, no, this is finance related terms, so this will not be there. Reduction of gender inequality, yes, inequality needs to be reduced, so what will not be there? This. Strengthening capital market would not be there, and hence this would be the right answer. Which of the following factors, policies were affecting the price rise in India in the recent past? Affecting it, whether positive or negatively, anyway. Minimum support price, yes, minimum support price will affect. Government's trading, yes, if government keeps buying a lot for buffer stocks, so the amount will reduce in the market, the price may go up. So government's trading, or if government keeps selling, that is also, that can reduce the price. Government stockpiling, again, if the government is stockpiling, it's like a hoarding. Now it's legal, official, because government does for a reason, for Food Security Act, for buffer stock, that's fine, but that is going to impact. Consumer subsidies, if the government is giving too much of subsidy, again the prices will go down. If subsidies are less, prices will go up. Hence all of the options are correct. Hence the correct answer is option D, that is 1, 2, 3 and 4. Consider the following statements. In the case of all cereals, pulses and oilseeds, the procurement at minimum support price is unlimited in any state? No, there is no such thing as unlimited. In case of cereals and pulses, the MSP is fixed in any state at a level to which the market price will never rise? No, it's not that. Because MSP will not be so high up to which the market prices will never rise. That's wrong. Market prices can go beyond. MSP is there when the market prices are very low, then the farmers can sell it at MSP to the government. But market prices can definitely go beyond MSP. So this is wrong, hence correct answer is option D, that is neither 1 nor 2. Right. Now, which of the following activities constitute real sector in the economy? What is a real sector? A real sector is a sector wherein the production takes place of a physical entity, agricultural sector, industrial sector. Banking, for example, would not be the real sector if you, or let's say servicing. Service sector would not be a real sector if there is nothing created which is tangible. So that is the definition of real sector. Farmers harvesting their crop, yes. Textile mills converting raw cotton into fabrics, yes. Commercial bank lending money to a trading company, no. Banking also is a part of a service sector. So 1 is there, 2 is there, 3 is not there. So this is gone, and this is also gone. This will be the remaining option. But let us see the fourth statement also. Corporate body issuing rupee denominated bonds, again no. Again financial service is being provided, which is a service sector. So no, real sector would be the first and the second statement, that is option A, 1 and 2. Alright guys. So with this we finish the socio-economic sector also, and we have covered the previous year questions of 13 years, the concepts related to that, the important concepts of the important topics have been covered in this revision class. If you have gone through each of this revision class lectures properly, you would benefit a lot in the upcoming prelims examination. So on behalf of Legacy IAS, I wish you all the best, and please, I hope you have subscribed to the channel so that you can get such more things coming on your way. Thank you.